Chapter 140. By relying on his terrifying physical strength, Xiao Chun had completely suppressed the sturdy youth. The more he fought, the more aggrieved and frightened he became. He thought that his life would not be in danger, but who would have thought that Xiao Chen's physical strength would be so strong? The aura of death shrouded the sturdy youth. He was terrified. He knew that if this continued, he would be killed by Xiao Chen sooner or later. A touch of fear had already appeared in his heart. He struggled to resist Xiao Chen's attack and begged for mercy. "Brother Xiao Chun, I admit defeat. I admit defeat." He took the initiative to admit defeat, but after hearing these words, Xiao Chun did not have the slightest intention to stop. His attack did not reduce. Admit defeat? What a joke. Today he had come here to kill. After entering the life and death arena, wanting to survive was simply a dream. Didn't the disciples of Zhao Lu's faction like to fight? Today, he would directly beat them until they were afraid. It was impossible to give this person the slightest chance to live. His attack became more and more violent. After dozens of attacks, the sturdy youth gradually became unable to endure. Finally, Xiao Chun seized an opportunity and punched him in the chest. His whole sternum caved in, and then another punch shattered his heart. His eyes widened, and he died on the life and death arena. He did not have the slightest intention to hold back. He seized the opportunity and killed the sturdy youth with 2 punches. So far, this was the first time that a disciple of the 2 factions had died. Not only the disciples of Zhao Lu faction found it difficult to accept this result, even Qin Heng and the others were somewhat sluggish. A disciple of the same faction had actually died. His attack was very straightforward, without the slightest hesitation, and did not give the opponent any chance. Looking at Xiao Chun, who was still standing proudly on the life and death arena, the disciples of Zhao Lu faction slightly changed their expression. The way they looked at Xiao Chun also changed. He really killed, from the beginning until now. Everyone only thought that Xiao Chun did this to attack Zhao Lu faction. No one thought that Xiao Chun would actually dare to kill. After a short period of astonishment, many disciples of Zhao Lu faction opened their mouths and shouted, "Xiao Chun, how audacious of you! You actually dared to kill a fellow disciple in public." "That's right. We are all disciples of the heavenly sword peak. Xiao Chun, how could you do such a thing to your fellow disciples?" "Xiao Chun, I will definitely report this matter to the upper echelons of the palace and let you receive the punishment you deserve. Vicious, too vicious. Xiao Chun, you are a murderer." Many disciples of Zhao Lu's faction shouted. However, Xiao Chun did not care about it all. With a contemptuous smile on his face, he glanced at the crowd condescendingly, and then said with a sneer, "Don't worry. If you want to report it, go ahead. But don't forget that I have set up the life and death arena. Once on the life and death arena, it is up to fate. He was not as good as others, so he can't blame anyone for his death. I believe that if I was not as good as him, he would not have let me go. Now, I only ask one thing. Who else dares to come on the life and death arena?" He was not afraid of these people complaining at all. He had set up the life and death arena. Even if he killed someone, the sect rules could not do anything to him. After all, if you don't want to die, you cannot go on the life and death arena. Once you go on the life and death arena, you will die in vain. Who else dares to come on the life and death arena? Hearing Xiao Chen's words, many disciples of Zhao Lu faction were stunned. They had already raised the requirement to the entry level of the Earth Realm, but even so, the sturdy young man was still killed by Xiao Chun. The disciples with low cultivation were pale, while the disciples with high cultivation were furious, but they could not go on the life and death arena. They wanted to tear Xiao Chun apart. Under the furious gaze of many disciples, finally, another disciple walked on the life and death arena. He was thin and had a somewhat feminine temperament. He was also at the entry level of the Earth Realm, but his aura was much stronger than that of the previous sturdy young man. "You'll regret what you've done today," the disciple said coldly as he stood in front of Xiao Chun. After saying that, a long sword appeared in his hand instantly. Without any superfluous words, he directly attacked Xiao Chun. He was also a sword cultivator. In fact, almost all the disciples of Tianjin Peak were sword cultivators. Otherwise, it would not be called Tianjin Peak. The long sword attacked Xiao Chun from an extremely tricky angle, like a snake. However, in Xiao Chun's eyes, such swordsmanship was really too inferior. This person's comprehension of swordsmanship was really too poor. Therefore, his attack was easily resolved by Xiao Chun. He still did not use the red-edged sword. He only faced the attack with a pair of iron fists. After a fierce battle, this person's battle strength was indeed stronger than that of the previous sturdy young man, but that was all. The sword stabbed out, and the sword light flashed. Seeing this, Xiao Chun only used 2 fingers to clamp the sword body, and then fiercely punched out. The same way, the heart meridian was shattered by the punch. The second person died on the life and death arena. After killing 2 people in a row, the disciples of Zhao Lu faction became more and more frightened. But at the same time, the anger in their hearts was constantly rising. Due to the fact that 2 people had died in a row, more and more disciples from Zhao Lu faction rushed over. At the same time, many geniuses at the entry level of the Earthbright Mirror stage also appeared. They kept challenging Xiao Chun. Each challenger was stronger than the previous one. However, there was no exception. In the end, all of them died at the hands of Xiao Chun. Xiao Chun killed them all. 6. He has killed 6 Earthbright Mirror stage disciples. Since the beginning of the battle, only 4 hours had passed. And yet, Xiao Chun had already killed off 6 Earthbright Mirror stage disciple from Zhao Lu faction. 6 people. In less than 6 hours, Xiao Chun had killed off 6 Earthbright Mirror stage disciples. This was definitely a first in the history of 9 Firmament's Palace. Moreover, it seems he has not used any spiritual power at all. He has relied solely on his physical strength to kill off the 6 of them, someone added. In all 6 battles, Xiao Chun had not used any spiritual power at all. He had relied solely on his physical strength to fight his enemies. Relying solely on his physical strength, he had killed off 6 Earthbright Mirror stage disciples. He was practically a Yao beast. No, not even the average Yao beast could possess such a level of physical strength. A tangled look appeared on their faces. 6 people had died in a row. This was a huge blow to the disciples of Zhao Lu faction. The leader of the group, a Sky Human stage disciple, cast a cold gaze at Xiao Chun. Killing intent overflowed from his mouth as he said, "Go find Junior Sister Qi. I don't believe he can win against Junior Sister Qi." The disciple was at the Sky Human stage. He was one of the few geniuses in Zhao Lu faction. The Junior Sister Qi he spoke of was the publicly acknowledged number 1 amongst all the Earthbright Mirror stage disciples in Zhao Lu faction. In the face of such a situation, Junior Sister Qi had to step forward, begging for collection, begging for recommendation, begging for reward. Chapter 141. Apart from Junior Sister Qi, there was probably no one else who could be Xiao Chun's opponent. Following the Sky Realm disciple's words, someone quickly went to inform Junior Sister Qi. No one dared to step onto the stage again. After waiting for about 15 minutes, 2 silhouettes rushed over from afar. One of them was a young girl. Her appearance wasn't bad and could be considered as a beauty. However, there was an arrogant look on her face. She rushed to the edge of the life and death arena and looked at the 6 corpses below the arena. The young girl frowned. She was none other than Junior Sister Qi, Qi Xiao Xiao. Her gaze swept across the 6 corpses. At the same time, the Sky Realm disciple from before slowly walked to Qi Xiao Xiao's side and said, "Junior Sister Qi, I'll have to trouble you with this matter. This brat is too arrogant. You must kill him on the spot." Hearing her senior brother's words, Qi Xiao Xiao nodded slightly and said coldly, "Don't worry, senior brother. I will definitely kill this brat on the life and death arena." Seeing the 6 corpses killed by Xiao Chun with her own eyes, Qi Xiao Xiao's expression didn't change at all. Obviously, she was very confident in her own strength. As soon as she finished speaking, under the cheers of the Zhao Lu faction's disciples, Qi Xiao Xiao strode onto the life and death arena. She stood 3 meters away from Xiao Chun. Only then did Qi Xiao Xiao carefully examine Xiao Chun. He had sword-like eyebrows and bright eyes. His temperament was ethereal. His clothes were as white as snow. His handsome appearance could move any woman. Moreover, after killing 6 people, Xiao Chun was still so indifferent. This made Xiao Chen's temperament even more apparent. The two of them looked at each other. Although she was attracted by Xiao Chen's temperament and appearance, Qi Xiao Xiao had no intention of holding back. Xiao Chen had killed 6 people from Zhao Lu faction. Today, she must kill him. She unsheathed her sword and pointed it at Xiao Chun. Qi Xiao Xiao said coldly, "Xiao Chun, draw your sword. Otherwise, you won't have a chance." "I don't need to use my sword to deal with you," Xiao Chun replied calmly. Qi Xiao Xiao was the strongest person in Zhao Lu's faction who had just entered the Earth Mirror Realm, but she was still no threat to Xiao Chun. If he went all out, Xiao Chun was strong enough to fight against a minor success Earth Mirror Realm cultivator. Seeing that Xiao Chun didn't take her seriously, Qi Xiao Xiao's eyes flashed with anger. Without saying a word, she thrust her sword forward. The sword gleamed brightly. Facing Qi Xiao Xiao's attack, Xiao Chun smiled. With a flick of his finger, the sword in Qi Xiao Xiao's hand was forcefully redirected and missed its target. "Your swordsmanship foundation is too weak. It's obvious that you haven't paid much attention to practicing the basics of swordsmanship. It's just a facade." Xiao Chun said indifferently as he flicked away Qi Xiao Xiao's attack with a finger. Of course, Xiao Chun only said that Qi Xiao Xiao's swordsmanship foundation was too weak. If it had been someone else, they wouldn't have said that. As the strongest person in Zhao Lu's faction who had just entered the Earth Mirror Realm, how could Qi Xiao Xiao be weak? Indifference, calmness, and undisguised contempt. Qi Xiao Xiao's face sank when she heard Xiao Chen's words. The anger in her heart rose steadily. She immediately used her killer move. Falling leaves, parting flowers. With a low growl, Qi Xiao Xiao brandished her sword. Streaks of sword qi formed pink petals around her. This was Qi Xiao Xiao's killer move, a high-level profound martial skill. Pink petals filled the sky and flew toward Xiao Chun. Xiao Chun smiled when he saw this. Not a bad martial skill. Unfortunately, you haven't reached the transformation realm, Xiao Chun said indifferently without any intention of dodging. As soon as he finished speaking, Xiao Chun pointed his finger and used the first finger of the 9th heaven sword finger. This was a martial skill that Chun Ling had taught Xiao Chun. Chun Ling didn't know the exact rank of this martial skill. However, this first finger of the 9th heaven sword finger was already comparable to a high-level martial skill. Chun Jun sword finger. Xiao Chun shouted. The first finger of the 9th heaven sword finger was called the Chun Jun sword finger. There was nothing special about this martial skill except its sharpness. When Xiao Chun pointed his finger, it was like a sharp GNE. White light whistled and a sword chi shot out from Xiao Chen's finger. In an instant, it destroyed more than 10 petals. Qi Xiao Zhao's expression changed slightly when she saw Xiao Chun destroy dozens of her petals with a single finger. However, she quickly regained her composure and smiled. Although the Chun Jun sword finger was sharp and comparable to a Xian-level martial technique, it was a pity that the area it covered was too small. Compared to the petals that filled the sky, the Chun Jun sword finger destroyed dozens of petals was not even worth mentioning. The Chun Jun sword finger's biggest weakness was its small killing range. Looking at the smile on Qi Xiao Zhao's face, Xiao Chun naturally knew what she was thinking. Perhaps this woman didn't believe that he could destroy her falling leaves, splitting flowers. The pure Jun sword finger's area of effect was small, but it could be used consecutively without any pause. Qi Xiao Xiao didn't know about this. Qi Xiao Xiao was just about to smile when she saw sword qi shooting out from Xiao Chen's index finger. The speed of the sword qi was so fast that it made her blush with shame. In a breath's time, more than 10 Chun Jun sword fingers were shot out. With such speed, the pink petals that filled the sky were completely destroyed by the Chun Jun sword finger in just a few breaths' time. He was like a machine gun in human form. Moreover, he didn't even need to reload. The falling leaves, splitting flowers was completely destroyed. Qi Xiao Zhao's face was filled with shock. However, Xiao Chun had no intention of holding back. So what if she was a woman? Xiao Chun wasn't the kind of person who couldn't move after seeing a woman. As long as it was his enemy, regardless of gender, Xiao Chun would do the same. Like before, Xiao Chun pointed his finger, and the Chun Jun sword finger shot out wildly. Sword Chi filled the sky and shot towards Qi Xiao Xiao. Facing so many sword Qi, Qi Xiao Xiao naturally couldn't withstand it. She desperately waved the long sword in her hand. However, she only managed to hold on for a few breaths' time before her long sword was knocked away. Without her sword, it was easy to imagine what would happen to Qi Xiao Xiao. Streams of extremely sharp sword Qi pierced through her body. Her limbs, chest, abdomen, and even her forehead were pierced through by the sword Qi. Soon, Qi Xiao Xiao's body was beyond recognition. Her vitality was rapidly dissipating. Her death was too miserable. There wasn't a single spot on her body that wasn't injured. Looking at Qi Xiao Xiao's death, the disciples of Zhao Lu's faction below the stage were all stunned. They looked at Xiao Chun with anger and a trace of fear. This guy was simply a cold-blooded demon. Facing a beauty like Qi Xiao Xiao, Xiao Chun didn't show any mercy. Didn't he have the slightest bit of pity for the fair sex? Many disciples thought in their hearts, "Please collect, recommend, reward." Chapter 142. Looking at Qi Xiao Zhao's corpse, everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. It was too tragic. She was killed by countless sword Qi. The power of the pure Jun sword finger alone might not be much of a threat, but the most frightening aspect of the pure Jun sword finger was that it could be used continuously, and there was no gap in time. As a result, the power of the pure Jun sword finger was infinitely magnified. This was the same logic as mosquitoes being able to bite an elephant to death. The sound of people sucking in cold air could be heard constantly. The Sky Realm disciple who ordered someone to call Qi Xiao Xiao over was now filled with killing intent. He glared at Xiao Chun and finally couldn't help but shout, "Xiao Chun, you're courting death." The Sky Realm disciple's name was Gao Hang. He was ranked in the top 3 among all the disciples in Zhao Lu's faction. His cultivation had reached the initial Sky Realm, and he was extremely powerful. The reason why he was so angry was because he and Qi Xiao Xiao were lovers. He had thought that Qi Xiao Xiao would be able to suppress Xiao Chun easily. Who would have thought that Xiao Chun would be so powerful that he could kill Qi Xiao Xiao right in front of him? His speed was so fast that he didn't even have time to react. Looking at Qi Xiao Zhao's mangled corpse, the hatred in Gao Hang's heart was imaginable. He didn't care about the rules at all. He just wanted to kill Xiao Chun to avenge Qi Xiao Xiao. The aura of an initial Sky Realm expert soared into the sky from Gao Hang's body. A terrifying pressure pressed down on Xiao Chun. Just when Gao Hang was about to attack, a shout was heard. "Stop!" Song Xian rushed over and soon appeared beside Xiao Chun. Song Xian had also received the notice and rushed over. Seeing that Gao Hang was about to attack, he naturally didn't dare to hesitate. He quickly rushed to Xiao Chen's side and protected him behind him. After stopping Gao Hang, Song Xian looked at the corpses of Qi Xiao Xiao and the other 6 disciples. A trace of surprise flashed in his eyes. He didn't expect Xiao Chun to be so ruthless. He killed 7 disciples of Zhao Lu's faction in one go. This was simply driving Zhao Lu crazy. Although the 2 factions were in constant conflict, no disciple had ever died. But today, Xiao Chun had killed 7 disciples by himself. Logically speaking, Xiao Chun had already seriously violated the rules of the palace. However, this brat had set up the life and death arena. As such, Xiao Chun did not violate the rules of the palace. For a moment, they didn't know what to say. At this time, Zhao Lu also appeared on the scene. Looking at the corpses of the 7 disciples from his faction, Zhao Lu's face was as black as the bottom of a pot. "You're simply lawless. Xiao Chun, you have openly harmed a fellow disciple. Today, I will personally kill you." After a moment of silence, the anger in Zhao Lu's heart completely erupted. His eyes locked onto Xiao Chun as he shouted with overflowing, killing intent. He had killed 7 of his disciples. If he didn't kill Xiao Chun today, what face would he, Zhao Lu, have? Zhao Lu was about to make a move, but Song Xian stepped in front of Xiao Chun and shouted coldly at Zhao Lu, "Zhao Lu, if you dare touch a hair on Xiao Chen's head, I'll make sure you die with him." Song Xian, you. He openly harmed his fellow disciples and violated the rules of the palace. What's wrong with me killing him? Zhao Lu shouted coldly when Song Xian stopped him. Violated the rules of the palace? Zhao Lu, take a good look. They all died on the life and death arena. Xiao Chun didn't violate the rules of the palace, said Song Xian. Xiao Chun had set up the life and death arena, so he naturally didn't violate the rules of the palace. Moreover, the people who were killed by Xiao Chun had voluntarily stepped onto the life and death arena. Xiao Chun didn't force them. Zhao Lu, Xiao Chun didn't violate the rules of the palace. If you dare to touch Xiao Chun, I will immediately report it to the ruler, said Song Xian. He wasn't strong enough to compete with Zhao Lu, so Song Xian could only use the ruler of the continent of the 9 clouds to pressure him. Zhao Lu's heart sank when he heard that. The ruler of the continent of the 9 clouds really valued Xiao Chun. If Zhao Lu killed Xiao Chun without any reason, the ruler of the continent of the 9 clouds wouldn't let him off. To the ruler of the continent of the 9 clouds, Xiao Chun was definitely more important than Zhao Lu. At the ruler of the continent of the 9 clouds, he didn't care about strength. He cared about potential, because he was already invincible in the continent of the 9 clouds. Therefore, he valued young people's natural abilities more. Xiao Chun was one of the 10 strongest young geniuses of the continent of the 9 clouds. How could the ruler of the continent of the 9 clouds not care about Xiao Chun? If Xiao Chun had violated the rules of the palace of the 9 clouds, Zhao Lu would have dared attack Xiao Chun, but Xiao Chun hadn't violated the rules of the palace of the 9 clouds. If Zhao Lu dare hurt Xiao Chun and Song Xian went to the ruler of the continent of the 9 clouds, Song Xian would have to bear the consequences. Zhao Lu looked glum and remained silent for a few seconds. Then he had an idea and said to Song Xian, "All right, I can let him off, but he has to fight against my disciple to the death. Don't worry, my disciple is only at the initial level of the earth clear mirror layer. Xiao Chun can deal with him," said Song Xian. He couldn't kill Xiao Chun, so he had to let his disciple do it. That way, even if he killed Xiao Chun, the ruler of the continent of the 9 clouds couldn't say anything. The reason why he had only sent a disciple at the initial level of the earth clear mirror layer was because Zhao Lu was afraid that Xiao Chun would refuse. The difference in strength was too great, and Xiao Chun definitely wouldn't agree. After all, he wasn't an idiot, and having a cultivation at the initial level of the earth clear mirror layer gave Xiao Chun hope. Of course, this hope was false, because Zhao Lu's disciple wasn't an ordinary initial level earth clear mirror layer cultivator. Upon hearing Zhao Lu's words, Song Xian refused without thinking. Impossible. Xiao Chun will never agree. Song Xian couldn't agree to let Xiao Chun have a life and death battle with an initial level earth clear mirror cultivator. Zhao Lu shouted coldly, "If you don't agree, I will kill Xiao Chun right now. You don't need to scare me. At worst, I will die together with Xiao Chun. It's absolutely worth it to exchange my life for the life of a king of geniuses. Think about it yourself. I will give you 3 breaths of time. If you don't agree, I will attack immediately. You can't stop me." Song Xian was stupefied when he heard Zhao Lu. Did this guy really intend to fight to the death? While Song Xian was hesitating, Xiao Chun suddenly took a step forward and looked at Zhao Lu. "All right, I agree." Xiao Chun agreed. Song Xian frowned, but before he could say anything, Xiao Chun spoke first. "Don't worry, master. It's all right. I just need to stall for time. You should inform Uncle and the others as soon as possible. Tell them to contact the ruler of the continent of the 9 clouds, or the strong cultivators of the other peaks. That way, we can stop Zhao Lu. Please add, recommend, reward." Chapter 143. Everyone present knew Zhao Lu's purpose in forcing Xiao Chun to have a life and death battle with his disciple. Xiao Chun's initiative to accept the challenge not only made Song Xian's expression change, but also Qin Heng, Qi Yin, and the other disciples of Song Xian's faction. Originally, it was not easy to cross a realm to kill an enemy in the mysterious Ian realm, but now Xiao Chun had to fight against a warrior who had achieved the initial success of the Earth Clear Mirror realm. Moreover, he was chosen by Zhao Lu and accepted as a disciple. Obviously, he was not an ordinary person. Even if he was not invincible in the same realm, he was definitely one of the best. With such a gap in cultivation, did Xiao Chun have any chance of winning? Everyone was worried for Xiao Chun. As for Zhao Lu, when he heard that Xiao Chun had taken the initiative to accept the challenge, a smile immediately appeared on his face. He ignored Song Xian and said, "Okay." As his voice faded, Zhao Lu ordered someone to call his disciple. Zhao Lu had a total of 2 disciples. His eldest disciple was already at the heaven stage, while his youngest disciple was only at the initial stage of the earth mirror realm. His name was Chu Yang. Soon, Chu Yang, who was summoned, rushed over. The ordinary-looking Chu Yang first bowed respectfully to Zhao Lu and said, "Master." Then his eyes locked on Xiao Chun. Chu Yang already knew that he was going to have a life-and-death battle with Xiao Chun, but he didn't panic too much. With his initial stage, Earth Mirror Realm cultivation, how could he not deal with someone at the perfect stage of the mysterious Yuan stage? Even if Xiao Chun was one of the top 10 prided kings, Chu Yang was still confident that he could suppress Xiao Chun with such a gap in cultivation. Without any superfluous words, under Zhao Lu's nod, Chu Yang directly stepped onto the life and death arena and stood opposite Xiao Chun. The two stood facing each other. Facing the imminent life and death battle, Song Xian hesitantly stepped down from the life and death arena after Xiao Chun's repeated assurances. Standing below the arena and looking at Xiao Chun on the life and death arena, Song Xian had already decided that if Xiao Chun was defeated, even if he was no match for Zhao Lu, he would risk his life to save Xiao Chun. He didn't have much confidence in Xiao Chun in his heart. However, only Xiao Chun himself knew that with his current fighting strength, he wasn't completely powerless against a small success-level Earth-clear mirror martial artist. And Chu Yang happened to be the best whetstone to test his strength. Xiao Chun's storage ring flashed, and the red-edge sword appeared in his hand. Facing Chu Yang, physical strength alone was obviously not enough. But Xiao Chun also wouldn't underestimate his opponent. When Xiao Chun took out the red-edge sword, Chu Yang also took out his own sword. However, compared to the red-edge sword, Chu Yang's sword was obviously a grade lower. It was only a Xian weapon. After taking out their respective swords, the two moved almost at the same time. With a sneer on his face, Chu Yang thrust out his sword. In the face of Chu Yang's attack, Xiao Chun was not to be outdone. He also thrust out his sword. The tips of the two swords fiercely collided, and the sound of metal colliding rang out. In the first confrontation, to everyone's surprise, Chu Yang didn't gain any advantage. Chu Yang, who was facing Earth-clear mirror Xiao Chun, still didn't show any signs of falling into a disadvantageous position. Seeing this, Song Xian's eyes flashed with a touch of joy. Xiao Chun's fighting strength had once again exceeded his master's expectations. Sword Chi whistled. On the life and death arena, both of them raised their fighting strength to the extreme. Sword Chi, sword arts, martial skills, all kinds of methods were used one after another. Compared to these various methods, Chu Yang was inferior to Xiao Chun in all aspects except for his cultivation. Take Sword Chi, for example. Although Chu Yang had a small successor of clear mirror cultivation, his Sword Chi had only reached the small perfection stage. On the other hand, Xiao Chun had already reached the great perfection stage. As for sword arts, Chu Yang's understanding of the way of the sword was clearly inferior to Xiao Chun's. In addition to his physical strength, Xiao Chun's body wasn't any weaker than Chu Yang's. As a result, even if Chu Yang had an absolute advantage in terms of cultivation, he wouldn't be able to gain the slightest advantage against Xiao Chun. It had completely turned into an evenly matched battle. A great perfection mysterious Ian cultivator could actually fight a small success Earth-clear mirror cultivator. If they hadn't seen it with their own eyes, no one would have believed it. Is this the strength of King Jiao? A great perfection mysterious Ian cultivator can actually fight a small success Earth-clear mirror cultivator Xiao Chun without losing. Many disciples had such thoughts in their hearts. Not to mention the fact that Xiao Chun had crossed a whole realm. He had actually crossed a small realm on top of the fact that he had crossed a whole realm. Damn it! Everyone was shocked, but Zhao Lu's face had completely changed at this time. He originally thought that Chu Yang could easily suppress Xiao Chun, but who would have thought that Xiao Chen's battle strength was actually so strong that he could even fight Chu Yang? The development of the situation was completely opposite to what Zhao Lu had expected. Seeing that Chu Yang couldn't gain the slightest advantage, it was hard to say who would win or lose if this continued. If Xiao Chun killed Chu Yang, then Zhao Lu would suffer a double loss. Not only would he lose face, but even his own disciple would be buried here. He clearly didn't have much confidence in his heart. Watching every movement on the life and death arena, Zhao Lu couldn't wait to directly slap Xiao Chun to death. Of course, he was well aware of the consequences of doing so he didn't dare to do so. The expressions of the two factions were different. The Zhangxian side's initial worry had turned into joy. Based on the current situation, even if Xiao Chun couldn't kill Chu Yang, it shouldn't be too much of a problem for him to protect himself. As a result, Zhangxian and the others naturally felt relieved. Xiao Chun didn't care about the changes in the expressions of the surrounding people. After a fierce battle with Chu Yang, he had the most direct understanding of his own strength. Given his current battle strength, he no longer needed to fear a small success or a clear mirror cultivator like Chu Yang. Although I may have to pay a price to kill you, so what? I must kill you on the arena today, Xiao Chun thought to himself as he fought fiercely. It definitely wouldn't be easy to kill Chu Yang, but Xiao Chun was still confident that he could do it. Of course, Chu Yang definitely still had trump cards that he hadn't used yet. Next would be the real battle of life and death between the two sides. Just as Xiao Chun thought, Chu Yang grew more and more anxious as the battle dragged on. At this time, he couldn't care about anything else and could only use his killing move. His sword chi, swordsmanship foundation, and physical body were all inferior to Xiao Chen's. If the battle continued like this, he would most likely be suppressed by Xiao Chun. This was something that Chu Yang couldn't accept no matter what. Therefore, Chu Yang decided to end the battle with one move. His aura began to rise little by little, and his eyes flashed with extreme killing intent. The long sword in his hand slowly burned with flames. Without the slightest hesitation, Chu Yang slashed out with his sword. Flaming sword chi fiercely attacked Xiao Chun. At the same time, Chu Yang coldly shouted, "Demonic flame, sword technique. Please collect, recommend, reward." Chapter 144. Chu Yang did not dare to continue fighting with Xiao Chun. His sword energy, sword technique, and physical body were all inferior to Xiao Chen's. Chu Yang's only hope of winning was to use his own cultivation to suppress Xiao Chun in one breath. Only in this way could he have a chance of winning. He directly used his killing move, the Devil Flame sword technique. This was a set of low-grade earth level martial technique. It was the strongest move that Chu Yang had mastered. The sword formed by the raging flames fiercely attacked Xiao Chun. Facing the Devil Flame sword technique, Xiao Chen's eyes flashed with a touch of seriousness. It was indeed worthy of being called an earth-level martial technique. Its power was indeed much stronger than a profound level martial technique. Xiao Chun had not yet cultivated an earth-level martial technique. However, facing the attack of the Devil Flame sword technique, Xiao Chun did not intend to dodge. Although he did not have an earth-level martial technique, Xiao Chun also had his own trump card. That was the second finger of the Nine Heaven sword finger. The first finger, Chun Jun sword finger, was equivalent to an ordinary martial technique. The second finger was equivalent to a profound level martial technique. However, although it was a profound level martial technique, the Nine Heaven sword finger was extraordinary. How could an ordinary martial technique be compared to it? In addition, Chu Yang's Devil Flame sword technique had not been cultivated to the perfection of martial technique. Therefore, the second finger, Long Quan sword finger, should be able to resist it. During the time that Xiao Chun had come to the Sky Sword Peak, he had cultivated the first finger, Chun Jun sword finger, and the second finger, Long Quan sword finger. Moreover, they had both reached the perfection of martial technique. Although he had only cultivated two fingers, Xiao Chun had personally experienced the great power of the Nine Heaven Sword Finger. It was really hard to imagine what kind of power it would have if he had successfully cultivated all of the Nine Heaven Sword Finger. At that time, perhaps even the sky would be torn apart with just one finger. Xiao Chun did not try to dodge. He pointed his finger at the demonic flame sword that was coming at him. It seemed like a gentle movement, but when he pointed at the sword, a faint dragon roar was heard. Then, a sword light formed by a cyan dragon rushed out of Xiao Chun's index finger, roaring and rushing at the demonic flame sword. The sword was like a dragon. This was the terror of the second finger, the dragon spring sword finger. Unlike the first finger, the pure June finger, the dragon spring sword finger could not be used continuously. Moreover, every time the dragon spring sword finger was released, it would consume a large amount of one's spiritual energy. With Xiao Chun's current cultivation, every time he used the dragon spring sword finger, it would consume nearly 2/3 of his spiritual energy. In other words, even in his peak state, Xiao Chun could only use the dragon spring sword finger once. At this time, after experiencing a fierce battle with Chu Yang, Xiao Chun's spiritual energy was almost completely drained when he used the dragon spring sword finger. Just like Chu Yang, the dragon spring sword finger was Xiao Chun's last attack. If the dragon spring sword finger did not break Chu Yang's demonic flame sword technique, then Xiao Chun would not be able to fight anymore. The cyan dragon shadow soared into the sky and fiercely collided with the demonic flame sword finger. Seeing the two's killing moves collide, everyone present was shocked, especially Xiao Chun's dragon spring sword finger. They had never seen such a martial technique that could transform into a dragon shadow. It should be known that dragons were mythical beasts. In the entire history of the heavenly Chun continent, dragons only existed in legends. Not to mention the power of the dragon spring sword finger. Just its appearance alone was enough to make everyone yearn for it. Just think about it. When the finger was pointed out, the sword would be like a dragon. How domineering was that? Especially when coupled with Xiao Chun's handsome appearance. For a moment, many of the female disciples present looked at Xiao Chun with infatuation. He was simply too handsome. Terrifying energy crazily rampaged through the life and death arena. The azure dragon shadow and the demonic flame sword collided with each other, persisting for a full 10 breaths of time. In the end, what was unexpected was that the azure dragon shadow actually defeated the demonic flame sword. Xiao Chun and Chu Yang's killing moves collided head-on. The final result was Xiao Chun's victory. As the demonic flame sword finger dissipated, the dragon's spring sword finger, which still had some residual power, rushed towards Chu Yang. At this moment, Chu Yang's expression finally changed. Even his killing move was broken by Xiao Chun. Chu Yang's heart suddenly gave birth to an extreme sense of crisis. A dense aura of death completely enveloped him. He wanted to resist with all his might, but unfortunately, Chu Yang was now an arrow at the end of its flight. Without any surprise, the cyan dragon shadow formed by the dragon's spring sword finger swallowed Chu Yang into its stomach. Trapped in the cyan dragon shadow, everyone could clearly see that Chu Yang was instantly surrounded by countless sword chi. These sword chi were like sharp knives, constantly cutting Chu Yang's flesh. A blood-curdling scream came out of Chu Yang's mouth. Finally, in the cyan dragon shadow, Chu Yang died unwillingly under everyone's witness. As for his corpse, it was torn apart. It was too miserable. As a disciple of Zhao Lu, Chu Yang didn't even have a complete corpse left. His death was as if he was really swallowed by a raging dragon. With Chu Yang's death, the cyan dragon shadow began to slowly dissipate. So far, 8 disciples of Zhao Lu's faction had died in the hands of Xiao Chun. Chu Yang was Zhao Lu's beloved disciple, who was at the initial level of Earth Clear Mirror. Looking at Chu Yang's death, the disciples of Zhao Lu's faction who were present at the scene were dumbfounded. If Xiao Chun's killing of those 7 people had made them feel angry, then Xiao Chun's killing of Chu Yang had thoroughly shocked many disciples of Zhao Lu's faction. A martial artist at the great perfection of mysterious Ian realm, killed a martial artist at the initial level of Earth Clear Mirror. This kind of thing was impossible even for a top Heaven's Pride. In the whole Tiantian continent, perhaps only the top 10 Heaven's Pride kings could do this. After a long while, Zhao Lu came to his senses. He immediately looked at Xiao Chun with a face full of killing intent. Killing his beloved disciple in front of him, Zhao Lu's killing intent completely exploded in his heart. Of course, no one knew the reason why Zhao Lu wanted to kill Xiao Chun was not only because Xiao Chun killed Chu Yang, but more importantly, because Xiao Chun's talent had already frightened Zhao Lu. Now Xiao Chun was only at the great perfection of mysterious Aeon realm, but he could already do this. If Xiao Chun was allowed to continue to grow, Zhao Lu himself was not sure what would happen in the future. But one thing was certain. With Xiao Chun's talent, if he was allowed to continue to grow, he was likely to destroy the plan of Zhang Tianlei, the peak master of Prison Flame Peak. In other words, only Xiao Chun could pose a threat to Zhang Tianlei. A junior at the great perfection of mysterious Aeon realm was actually able to pose a threat to a peak master, a super expert at the Town Master realm. If this happened in normal times, Zhao Lu would laugh at himself for thinking too much. But now, Zhao Lu had such a feeling in his heart. Xiao Chun was really too incredible. If he continued to grow, anything could happen. Zhao Lu's killing intent had risen to the extreme. He was no longer as furious and arrogant as before. On the contrary, at this moment, Zhao Lu seemed to have incarnated into a poisonous snake. He stared coldly at Xiao Chun, constantly weighing in his mind whether to kill Xiao Chun here and there so that there was no possibility for him to grow. Please collect, recommend, reward. Chapter 145. Zhao Lu was determined to kill Xiao Chun. When Song Xian sensed the change in Zhao Lu's eyes, he immediately came to Xiao Chen's side. He could feel that Zhao Lu was really going to kill Xiao Chun. Now, Zhao Lu only had one question to consider, whether it was worth it to exchange his life for Xiao Chen's. He was well aware of the consequences of killing Xiao Chun, especially in front of so many people. There was no doubt that if Zhao Lu killed Xiao Chun, he wouldn't be able to survive. Therefore, Zhao Lu was now considering whether to perish together with Xiao Chun. Zhao Lu stared coldly at Xiao Chun, not paying attention to Song Xian who was standing in front of Xiao Chun. Given Song Xian's current strength, it was impossible for him to stop Zhao Lu. The atmosphere became a little tense. Once Zhao Lu made up his mind, Xiao Chun would undoubtedly die. There was no time to inform the ruler of the continent of the 9 clouds, and Song Xian couldn't stop Zhao Lu. While Zhao Lu was weighing his options, a voice suddenly sounded in his mind. The owner of the voice was naturally Zhang Tianlei, the peak master of the Prison Flame Peak. Kill this boy. I will take care of your family for you. Zhao Lu was still hesitating, but Zhang Tianlei had already given the order to kill. Moreover, the meaning of his words was very clear. Once Zhao Lu attacked, he would die without a doubt. However, Zhang Tianlei would help him take care of his family and descendants. This simple sentence was like the last straw, forcing Zhao Lu to make a choice. There was no way out. For a time, Zhao Lu no longer concealed the killing intent in his heart. Song Xian's expression grew more and more serious as he sensed the killing intent from Zhao Lu's body. He looked at Zhao Lu and shouted coldly, "Zhao Lu, what are you doing? Do you know the consequences of doing this?" Song Xian shouted coldly, having already guessed what Zhao Lu was going to do. Upon hearing Song Xian's words, a slightly crazed smile appeared on Zhao Lu's face. "Of course I know, but so what? Exchanging my life for the life of a king genius is worth it." Having made up his mind, Zhao Lu no longer hesitated and directly decided to attack. However, at this moment, no one noticed that a person wearing a Taoist robe with a wine jug in his hand was swaying as he rushed over from the horizon. His footsteps did not seem fast, but in reality, his speed was extremely fast. It was as though he had traversed through space and appeared above the sky sword peak in just a few steps. As he gulped down the wine, he flicked his finger. A white light flashed and hit Zhao Lu, who was in the middle of attacking. The attack was stopped by someone. Not only that, but the white light also pierced through Zhao Lu's left shoulder, instantly injuring him. The sudden appearance of the white light made everyone's expression change. They all looked up at the sky. "Dao Master Danyan," Xiao Chun said softly as he looked at the drunkard standing in the sky. The person was Dao Master Danyan. Xiao Chun didn't expect him to appear here. However, it was precisely because of his appearance that he seemed to have saved Xiao Chen's life. Otherwise, when facing Zhao Lu's attack just now, not only would Xiao Chun be in danger, but Song Xian would also be in the same situation. Dao Master Danyan's appearance obviously made Xiao Chun breathe a sigh of relief. However, Zhao Lu didn't think so. He looked at Dao Master Danyan with fear and a grave expression. A person who could seriously injure him with a single finger was definitely not a nobody. However, Zhao Lu didn't recognize Dao Master Danyan's identity for a moment. Dao Master Danyan didn't continue to attack. He didn't care about the gazes of the people below. After drinking a mouthful of wine, he looked at an empty place in front of him and said indifferently, "A dignified peak master hiding here to peep. TSK, TSK, TSK. How shameful." As Dao Master Danyan's voice faded, the new peak master of Prison Flame Peak, Zhan Tianlei, slowly emerged. It was only then that the crowd realized that Zhan Tianlei had been hiding here all this time and had witnessed everything with his own eyes. Zhan Tianlei naturally couldn't hide in front of Dao Master Danyan and was forced to show himself. Zhan Tianlei sneered and bowed to Dao Master Danyan. Then, he said indifferently, "So it's Dao Master Danyan of Heaven Dan Valley. I've heard a lot about you. However, this is a private matter of my 9 Firmaments Palace. Dao Master Danyan injured the chief elder of my Heavenly Sword Peak. Don't you think you've gone too far?" Hearing Zhan Tianlei's words, Dao Master Danyan burped and then looked down and asked, "Burp, where's the Peak Master of Heavenly Sword Peak?" Ignoring Zhan Tianlei, Song Xian rose into the air upon hearing Dao Master Danyan's words. He arrived before Dao Master Danyan and bowed respectfully. Junior Song Xian is the current Peak Master of Sky Sword Peak. Although he hadn't seen Dao Master Danyan before, Song Xian knew that he couldn't afford to offend this handsome drunkard just by hearing the 2 words Dao Master. Judging from Zhan Tianlei's attitude, even Song Xian couldn't afford to offend this person. After all, Zhan Tianlei had just broken through to the Dao Master realm, while Dao Master Danyan had been famous for many years. Although almost no one had seen Dao Master Danyan in action, and he didn't seem to have any impressive battle records, it was a piece of cake for a veteran Dao Master to bully a new Dao Master. Don't think that once you reach the Dao Master realm, you will be able to fight beyond your level. It's just a matter of talent. Anyone who can break through to the Dao Master realm is a genius. If you're not a genius, you will never be able to break through to the Dao Master realm. Therefore, at the level of Dao Master, the difference in cultivation was the difference in strength. Because of this, Dao Master Danyan could definitely bully Zhan Tianlei. Looking at Song Xian, who was standing respectfully in front of him, Dao Master Danyan put his arm around Song Xian's shoulder. They were like brothers who hadn't seen each other for many years. "Burp, Peak Master, I have something to discuss with you. I like Xiao Chun and want to take him as my disciple. Also, I plan to make an honorary elder in your Heavenly Sword Peak. What do you think? Peak Master, you won't refuse, right?" Dao Master Danyan didn't beat around the bush and directly told Song Xian his purpose. He had come all the way from the Heavenly Dan Valley for Xiao Chun. The reason why he proposed to be an honorary elder was that Dao Master Danyan wanted to help the Heavenly Sword Peak. It was obvious that the Heavenly Sword Peak was in a bad situation. Song Xian and the other 2 couldn't control the people in the Heavenly Sword Peak. If Dao Master Danyan became an honorary elder of the Heavenly Sword Peak, many things in the Heavenly Sword Peak could be solved. Dao Master Danyan didn't need to do anything. As long as he was there, he would be a deterrent that couldn't be ignored. Please collect, recommend, reward. Chapter 146. It was obvious that Dao Master Danyan wanted to help Sky Sword Peak. It was like a pie falling from the sky for a Tao master to take the initiative to surrender. The happiness came so suddenly that Song Xian didn't know how to respond. However, Tao Master Danyan didn't care about this. Seeing Song Xian in a daze, Tao Master Danyan laughed loudly. "Ha, good. Then it's settled." With that, Tao Master Danyan turned to Zhang Tianlei and said, "You said that this is a private matter of the Sky Sword Peak. However, you are not a member of the Sky Sword Peak. You can leave now." Tao Master Danyan had become an honorary elder of Sky Sword Peak. Zhang Tianlei's heart turned cold. However, he didn't have the guts to fight Tao Master Danyan. Zhang Tianlei snorted and left without saying a word. Today, he was completely defeated. Not only did he fail to kill Xiao Chun, but he also attracted Tao Master Danyan. With Tao Master Danyan in charge of Sky Sword Peak, it would be difficult to deal with Sky Sword Peak in the future. Zhang Tianlei felt a chill in his heart when he thought of the order of the person behind him. He was very clear about the means of the person behind him. Since he wanted the Sky Sword Peak to be destroyed, he would definitely do it. Zhang Tianlei was very clear about the consequences if he messed up his plan. After Zhang Tianlei left, Zhao Lu was no longer a threat. The following matters were left to Song Xian. Tao Master Dingyun brought Xiao Chun to Immaculate Residence. Xiao Chun didn't know what to say when he met Tao Master Danyan again. Although he was already Tao Master Danyan's disciple in the city of Medicine King. But, haha, my good disciple, how was it? Did you miss your master? Tao Master Danyan didn't hold back at all. As soon as he returned to Immaculate Residence, he put his arm around Xiao Chen's shoulder and said with a strong smell of alcohol. After some teasing, the master and disciple sat down in the courtyard. Looking at Tao Master Danyan, Xiao Chen said, "Actually, you didn't have to come all the way to Nine Cloud Palace. If I had time, I would have gone to Medicine King Valley to find you." Hearing Xiao Chen's words, Tao Master Danyan slapped Xiao Chen's head and scolded him. "Little brat, don't call me master. Call me master." After scolding and scolding, Tao Master Danyan said, "If I wait for you to go to Medicine King Valley, I'd die. And I know you won't stay in the future. Even if you go to King Valley, you won't be able to stay for long. And I know, I'm Nine Cloud Palace. Master Danyun's." Although Tao Master Danyan spoke casually, his concern for Xiao Chun was obvious. Moreover, judging from his actions, it was not difficult to see how much he valued Xiao Chun. Knowing that Tao Master Danyan didn't want to harm him, Xiao Chun didn't say anything else. After all, it was good that Tao Master Danyan came to Celestial Sword Peak. At least, he could help Song Xian and the others. He calmly accepted Tao Master Danyan's arrival. The news that Tao Master Danyan had become an honorary elder of Celestial Sword Peak spread quickly. At the same time, Zhao Lu received the punishment he deserved. He had dared attack Xiao Chun, so he was imprisoned in Thunder Prison. Even though Zhao Lu had been dealt with, Zhang Tianlei quickly arranged for another chief elder to join Celestial Sword Peak. His cultivation level was higher than Zhao Lu's. He had already reached the small circle of the Tao King layer. His name was Qin Zhao. What was the ruler of the continent of the Nine Clouds thinking? He could have easily solved the problem of the Celestial Sword Peak, but the ruler of the continent of the Nine Clouds didn't do that. He just watched the battle between the Celestial Sword Peak and the Prison Flame Peak. In the depths of Nine Clouds Palace, on a celestial mountain, where the ruler of the continent of the Nine Clouds lived. At that moment, outside of a wooden house at the top of the mountain, the ruler of the continent of the Nine Clouds was wearing a thunderous robe. He was seated on a bamboo chair. In front of him was a beautiful woman in a luxurious dress. She was talking to the ruler of the continent of the Nine Clouds angrily. "Ruler, why don't you show up? Why do you let Prison Flame Peak cause trouble?" The beautiful woman was the leader of Holy Maiden Peak. Her name was Su Zhen. Prison Flame Peak had gone too far, and Su Zhen had fallen in love with Song Xian and the other two's master, Song Fo. Therefore, she had wanted to help Celestial Sword Peak, but the ruler of the continent of the Nine Clouds had stopped her. Not only had he refused to help Celestial Sword Peak, but he had also stopped her. Su Zhen couldn't accept what the ruler of the continent of the Nine Clouds had done. When Su Zhen questioned him, the ruler of the continent of the Nine Clouds didn't get angry. He just smiled and said, "You think I don't care about Celestial Sword Peak? Isn't that the case?" asked Su Zhen angrily. "Ha, you think what happened back then really happened because of you?" asked the ruler of the continent of the Nine Clouds, smiling. When Su Zhen heard that, she remained silent. What did the ruler mean? She didn't reply. When the ruler of the Nine Clouds saw that Su Zhen remained silent, he stood up and patted her shoulder. Then, he slowly walked to the edge of the mountain and looked at the sea of clouds. "Just for you, is it possible for Dongfang Duxing to kill Blue Wind?" Moreover, after the matter was exposed, Dongfang Duxing instantly disappeared without a trace. Even I couldn't find any news of him. Obviously, he had long expected that there would be a day when he would be exposed. Moreover, although that Zhan Tianlei doesn't seem to have any connection with Dongfang Duxing on the surface, I can be sure that Zhan Tianlei is one of Dongfang Duxing's men. He left on his own and planted a spy in Prison Flame Peak. Do you really think that Dongfang Duxing did all this for the so-called jealousy? Su Zhen, what kind of person do you think Dongfang Duxing is? Asked the ruler of the continent of the Nine Clouds slowly. Dongfang Duxing was the former leader of Prison Flame Mountain. When Su Zhen heard that, she understood what the ruler of the continent of the Nine Clouds meant. Since Celestial Sword Peak had come back, Prison Flame Mountain had kept oppressing them. The ruler of the continent of the Nine Clouds hadn't done anything to stop them. Regarding the matter of the Heavenly Sword Peak, it seemed to be a matter of course, but there were indeed quite a number of contradictions and doubtful points. Firstly, there was Dongfang Duxing. With his character, how could he possibly kill Blue Wind just because of jealousy? Furthermore, the disappearance of Dongfang Duxing and the relentless pursuit of the Heavenly Sword Peak by the Prison Flame Peak. The problems hidden within were probably not as simple as they seemed on the surface. Dongfang Duxing was probably hiding some secrets. That secret was the real reason why he had attacked Songfeng. It was also the real reason why Prison Flame Mountain hadn't let Celestial Sword Peak off. Because of that, the ruler of the continent of the Nine Clouds had turned a blind eye to it. He wanted to know what Dongfang Duxing was doing. Please add, recommend, reward. Chapter 147, said the ruler of the continent of the Nine Clouds. Of course, he didn't tell Su Zhen everything. The ruler of the continent of the Nine Clouds turned around and looked at Su Zhen. "Do you understand what to do now?" "I understand," said Su Zhen, nodding respectfully when she heard the ruler of the continent of the Nine Clouds. The ruler of the continent of the Nine Clouds didn't blame Su Zhen. After that, he told her to leave and reminded her not to get involved in the affairs of the Celestial Sword Peak. The most important thing was to draw out Dongfang Duxing. As long as he was there, the Celestial Sword Peak wouldn't be destroyed. After talking to the ruler of the continent of the Nine Clouds, Su Zhen understood. Indeed, as long as the ruler was there, the Celestial Sword Peak wouldn't be destroyed. After Su Zhen left, the ruler of the continent of the Nine Clouds looked in the direction of the Celestial Sword Peak and smiled indifferently. "Dan Yun, I didn't think you'd get involved in this mess, too." Sigh, nobody knew what the ruler of the continent of the Nine Clouds was really thinking. Even Su Zhen only knew the tip of the iceberg. In fact, the ruler of the continent of the Nine Clouds didn't really care about what she said. At the level of the ruler of the continent of the Nine Clouds, there were very few things that could attract his attention. Every single thing could change the whole situation of the Tian Chun continent. Therefore, the ruler of the continent of the Nine Clouds attached great importance to Dongfang Duxing. The most important reason was that he hadn't told Su Zhen. Everything seemed calm again. Even though the Prison Flame Peak hadn't given up on oppressing the Celestial Sword Peak, Dan Yin was there, so Song Xian and the other two felt less pressured. Even Qin Zhao, who had replaced Zhao Lu, was very calm. He didn't rashly offend Song Xian and the other two. The Celestial Sword Peak was back on the right track, but it was calm on the surface. As long as Zhan Tianlei and the people behind him didn't give up, the Celestial Sword Peak and the Prison Flame Peak would face a catastrophe sooner or later. A few days later, Xiao Chun began to learn the way of elixir from Tao Master Danyan. However, as a beginner, Xiao Chun's current task was only to learn the most basic things, such as some pharmacological knowledge. It was very dull, but it was also very important. As an alchemist, he had to engrave this knowledge in his heart. Xiao Chun memorized all the knowledge in his heart. While he was cultivating hard, Tao Master Danyan had his own courtyard. It was already midnight, but Tao Master Danyan was drinking wine alone in the courtyard. Opposite him, Tao Master Danyan deliberately placed a wine cup in front of him, as if he was waiting for someone. Sure enough, in the dark night, a figure had unknowingly sat down on the seat opposite to Tao Master Danyan. Tao Master Danyan wasn't surprised at all. He poured a cup of wine for the person and then took a sip. Then, he said indifferently, "I'm sorry, but I'm sorry. Looks like I'm still not suited for drinking." "Is it because it's not suitable or you don't want to drink it?" Hearing this, Tao Master Danyan laughed. When they talked, the dark clouds in the sky slowly dispersed. Moonlight shone down. Under the moonlight, the person opposite Tao Master Danyan was the ruler of the continent of the 9 clouds, wearing a thunderous robe. The ruler of the continent of the 9 clouds put down his cup. He was different from Tao Master Danyan. He didn't like drinking. He smiled. "It's not a disgrace if you can't drink. You're a ruler, but you pretend to be a Tao Master. What's the point?" "I don't want Little Yin to feel too much pressure," replied Tao Master Danyan when he heard the ruler of the continent of the 9 clouds. Little Yin was actually the celestial alchemy ruler. Her full name was Mo Yin. "I'm thinking if people knew that Dan Valley didn't have just one ruler, but 2, what would happen to Tianqian continent?" asked the ruler of the continent of the 9 clouds, smiling. The two of them had known each other for a long time. They talked casually. At the same time, they seemed to know each other very well. After chatting for a while, the ruler of the continent of the 9 clouds looked serious. "Danyan, the world is going to change." The ruler of the continent of the 9 clouds wasn't joking at all. When Tao Master Danyan heard that, he looked grave. Even though he had just arrived in 9 Clouds Palace and didn't know what was going on, if the ruler of the continent of the 9 clouds said that, it meant the situation was very serious. Even a ruler like him wouldn't be able to control it. Since the ruler said the world was going to change, it meant it was going to change. Emptying the cup of wine in one gulp, Tao Master Danyan also recovered from his usual drunkenness. His eyes flashed coldly as he said, "Is it an internal matter of the heavenly Chun continent?" He asked the ruler of the continent of the 9 clouds if it was about the Tianqian continent. When the ruler of the continent of the 9 clouds heard that, he shook his head and said, "Demon cultivators, it wasn't about the Tianqian continent. It was about the Tianqian continent." When Tao Master Danyan heard the ruler of the continent of the 9 clouds, he suddenly released a terrifying qi. People in the world had already forgotten what demon cultivators represented, but Tao Master Danyan and the ruler of the continent of the 9 clouds knew exactly what demon cultivators meant. 3,000 years ago, a catastrophic war broke out in the heavenly Chun continent. In that war, the population of the heavenly Chun continent decreased by 70%. Tens of billions of warriors died in that war. And in that war, the opponents of the heavenly Chun continent were the so-called demonic cultivators. Nobody knew where the demon cultivators had come from. They only knew that 3,000 years ago, demon cultivators had opened a portal to the Tianqian continent and a great war had broken out. Demonic cultivators, to put it bluntly, were also humans. It was just that their path was completely different from that of the orthodox human race. Humans cultivated martial arts and pursued the martial Tao. As for demonic cultivators, they could be said to be traitors to their own race. They didn't recognize their own identity as humans and instead worshipped the devil race. They practiced the devil race's techniques and sold their souls to the devil race. Because of this, demonic cultivators and humans were mortal enemies. When Tao Master Danyan thought about the Great War 3,000 years ago, he shivered. Back then, the Tianqian continent had almost been exterminated. Many demon cultivators had been forced to retreat, and in the end, They had destroyed the portal to the Tianshan continent. He had thought that demon cultivators couldn't come back to the Tianshan continent anymore. But now, the ruler of the continent of the Nine Clouds had mentioned demon cultivators. Tao Master Danyan looked at the ruler of the continent of the Nine Clouds seriously. You know about demon cultivators? Where are they? They're in the Nine Clouds Palace. I think it's not only the Nine Clouds Palace, but also the other overlords. They have high positions, said the ruler of the continent of the Nine Clouds. Finally, Tao Master Denyun sighed and said, "What are you going to do? Should I contact the others?" Tao Master Denyun asked the ruler of the continent of the Nine Clouds what he thought and whether he should contact the other rulers. When the ruler of the continent of the Nine Clouds heard that, he shook his head. For the time being, we can't act rashly and alert the enemy. Have you thought about it? The space-time tunnel was completely destroyed 3,000 years ago. So where did these Xiomoists come from? You mean they're survivors of the battle 3,000 years ago? Or their descendants? Indeed. Even though we won the battle 3,000 years ago, and it's said that all the Xiomoists were annihilated, it was a great war. Billions of people took part in it, and the flames of war spread throughout the Tianshan continent. It's inevitable that some Xiomoists escaped the net. So many years have passed, and they've been hiding in the Tianshan continent. They're reproducing, and they're also secretly infiltrating other influential groups. What if there are Xiomoists hiding among the rulers? The number of rulers in the Tianshan continent could be counted on one hand. On the surface, there were only 7 rulers. Even if Tao Master Danyun and the others were hiding, there were no more than 10. If there were Xiomoists hiding among the 10 rulers, the consequences would be unimaginable. They couldn't act rashly and alert the enemy. The ruler of the continent of the Nine Clouds paused for a few seconds before continuing. But Tian Valley, I completely trust you because I know you and Little Yin very well. You can send a letter to Little Yin and tell her to investigate secretly in Tian Valley, said the ruler of the Nine Clouds. Tian Valley could be trusted. When Tao Master Danyan heard that, he nodded and added, I wouldn't have thought that after thousands of years, the Xiomoists would come back in a swirl of dust. But what is their purpose? They're hiding in the Tianshan continent. They can't do anything. That's what I wanted to tell you, said the ruler of the continent of the Nine Clouds. First, they couldn't act rashly and alert the enemy. Then, they had to figure out the Xiomoist's purpose. When the ruler of the continent of the Nine Clouds said that, Tao Master Danyun immediately guessed what the Xiomoist's purpose was. His expression changed drastically. They want to open the space-time tunnel again so that the Xiomoists on the other side can attack again. They want to destroy the Tianshan continent in one fell swoop. The Xiomoists have been hiding for such a long time, and they had already infiltrated the Tianshan continent. Tao Master Danyun and the ruler of the continent of the Nine Clouds looked at each other. Even though they didn't know how the Xiomoists were going to open the space-time tunnel, they couldn't let them succeed. Otherwise, the Tianshan continent would be plunged into the flames of war again. How many people would the Tianshan continent lose this time? Would they be able to win again? They didn't know. The ruler of the continent of the Nine Clouds couldn't afford to gamble. If they lost, billions of people would die in the Tianshan continent. The situation was far more serious than anyone had imagined. A storm was brewing. The flames of war could descend on the Tianshan continent again. The ruler of the continent of the Nine Clouds could only do his best to prevent it from happening. After some discussion, Tao Master Danyun and the ruler of the continent of the Nine Clouds decided that they would try to get information from the Xiomoists. Secondly, they would confirm the rulers' identities. If any Xiomoists managed to sneak into the ranks of the rulers, they would join hands to kill them. Of course, it would be best if they didn't. Finally, after confirming the rulers' identities, they would investigate secretly. First, they would capture all the Xiomoists from the influential groups of the Tianshan continent. Then, they would expand their search area and kill all the Xiomoists who were hiding in the Tianshan continent. Of course, the most important thing was to prevent the Xiomoists from opening the space-time tunnel because once the tunnel was opened, it would be difficult to reverse the situation. They could only fight to the death. Chapter 149. After chatting with the ruler of the continent of the Nine Clouds for the whole night, Dao Master Danyun went back to the Celestial Sword Peak the next morning. At the same time, Dao Master Danyun had sent a message to the Celestial Dan Valley. When the Heaven Alchemy ruler received the news, he was astonished. At the same time, according to Dao Master Danyun's instructions, the Heaven Alchemy ruler started investigating secretly in the Celestial Dan Valley. However, it was impossible to find all the demon cultivators in such a short time. While the ruler of the continent of the Nine Clouds and the others were investigating secretly in an ordinary mountain range in the central regions, there was an empty mountain range. There were many buildings rising from the ground. There was a gigantic palace in the middle. It was an underground city. Perhaps no one in the entire Heavenly Chun continent knew of the existence of this underground city. And this was the lair of those demonic cultivators. At this moment, in the palace, there were a total of 8 black-robed people kneeling on the ground respectfully. On the high platform, there was also a black-robed person sitting on the skeleton throne with a golden blade. From his chi, it was obvious that he was a ruler. The 8 people kneeling before him were all Dao cultivators. If the ruler of the continent of the Nine Clouds had been there, he would have recognized Dongfang Duxing, the former leader of the prison Flame Mountain, among those 8 people. The ruler looked at Dongfang Duxing and asked in a hoarse voice, "How is the key? How long will it take for it to wake up?" "Master, the key is in the Celestial Sword Peak of the Nine Clouds Palace. It will take at least 5 years, replied Dongfang Duxing. 5 years? Give the order to stop all operations. In order to ensure the key's safety, give up all the spies we can't protect. The key is our ultimate goal. Even if we have to die, we have to make sure the key wakes up safely. As long as we have the key, we'll succeed. Then, we'll open the space-time tunnel again. Our demon cultivators will definitely be able to destroy the Heavenly Chun continent in one fell swoop," ordered the ruler. He didn't know what the key was, but it must be very important. In order to make sure the key wakes up smoothly, the ruler didn't hesitate to give up all the spies he had hidden in the influential groups. Maybe in his opinion, as long as the key wakes up, he didn't care about losing people. The demon cultivators also responded. They didn't hesitate to give up the spies they had spent thousands of years on. The war between the Heavenly Chun continent and the demon cultivators had started again. Of course, only the rulers knew about it. Over the next few days, Xiao Chun had already memorized all the pharmacological knowledge that Dao Master Danyun had imparted to him. On this day, Dao Master Danyun personally tested Xiao Chen's mastery of pharmacological knowledge. In just a few days, Xiao Chun had already memorized all the knowledge. He had a photographic memory. Even Dao Master Danyun praised him for his speed of progress. Xiao Chun had completely grasped the basic knowledge of medicine. Now, he could start refining medicine. Taking Xiao Chun to his residence, Dao Master Danyun took out an ordinary alchemy furnace from a storage ring and said to Xiao Chun, "Alchemists are also divided into different levels. As we all know, starting from the apprentices, there are profound level alchemists, earth level alchemists, and sky level alchemists. At the same time, not only are there different levels for alchemists, but also for elixirs. The lowest level is ordinary elixir, followed by profound elixir, earth elixir, and heaven elixir. Each level of elixir is divided into 3 grades. Moreover, elixirs of the same grade are divided into cyan, red, and gold patterns. Cyan patterns are the worst, and gold patterns are the best. For example, if a low-grade mortal grade pill showed a blue pattern after completion, then it would be the most inferior blue pattern mortal pill. If it showed a golden pattern, then it would be the most precious gold pattern mortal pill. Dao Master Danyun patiently explained the levels of elixirs and alchemists to Xiao Chun. Of course, Dao Master Danyun was only talking about the basics. He did not mention the higher levels. After all, these are too far away from Xiao Chun's level. After that, Dao Master Danyun was ready to demonstrate to Xiao Chun. As a beginner, Xiao Chun could only start with the lowest level ordinary elixir. Spirit Restoring Elixir was the most popular elixir in the heavenly Chun continent. Its function was very simple. It was to restore a warrior's spiritual power. Watch carefully, Tao Master Danyan said to Xiao Chun. Then, he began to refine the elixir himself. He deliberately slowed down a lot, including the order of putting in the elixirs, the method of refining the elixir, and the control of the fire. While refining, Tao Master Danyan explained to Xiao Chun, and Xiao Chun listened carefully. After a full quarter of an hour, Tao Master Danyan finished refining the Spirit Restoring Elixir. There were a total of 18 elixirs. Each elixir had a golden pattern on it, indicating that it was a golden pattern Spirit Restoring Elixir. For Tao Master Danyan, refining the Spirit Restoring Elixir was too easy. If it was not to let Xiao Chun see the whole process better, Tao Master Danyan would be able to refine the elixir in less than 100 breaths. Moreover, he could guarantee that the elixir would reach the level of golden pattern. After refining, Tao Master Danyan took the elixirs and threw them away. He did not care about the value of these elixirs. After all, they were just spirit-restoring elixirs. Even if they had golden pattern, their value was limited. They were not worth mentioning to Tao Master Danyan. Did you see it clearly? Tao Master Danyan looked at Xiao Chun and asked. Hearing Tao Master Danyan's words, Xiao Chun nodded and said, yes. Well, then you can do it yourself. Here are the materials for 100 portions of Spirit Restoring Elixir. Remember, the three most important elements in the whole process are the order of putting the elixirs into the furnace, the method of refining the elixir, and the control of the fire. Leaving the materials for 100 portions of Spirit Restoring Elixir, Tao Master Danyan gave a few more words of advice. Then, he went back to his room to drink, returning to his drunken appearance. At first, the method of refining elixir given to Xiao Chun was the most basic one. As for Tao Master Danyan's unique method of refining elixir, it was still too early for Xiao Chun to learn it. Stepping in front of the furnace, Xiao Chun recalled the three essential elements of refining elixir that Tao Master Danyan had told him. The order of putting the elixirs into the furnace, the method of refining the elixir, and the control of the fire. Repeatedly recalling these words, Xiao Chun closed his eyes and meditated for a quarter of an hour. Then, he began to refine the elixir. First, he warmed the furnace with his own heaven fire. Then, he threw in the herbs and began to refine the elixir. According to Tao Master Danyan's instructions, a wisp of white heaven fire suddenly appeared in Xiao Chun's hand. Then, with a flick of his finger, the flame instantly disappeared into the furnace. Then, Xiao Chun began to throw in the herbs according to the order. Please collect, recommend, reward. Chapter 150. According to Tao Master Danyan's instructions, Xiao Chun threw one spiritual herb after another into the cauldron. After all the spiritual herbs were thrown into the cauldron, he began to fuse the medicinal power of these spiritual herbs and finally condense them into a pill. It was his first time refining medicine. Xiao Chun carefully controlled the heaven fire to refine the medicinal efficacy of the spirit herbs one by one. However, because of a careless mistake, a spirit herb was directly burned by the heaven fire. Sensing Xiao Chun's first failure, Tao Master Danyan, who had returned to his room, smiled slightly. This was normal. Anyone who tried to refine medicine for the first time would definitely fail, because the control of the heaven fire required numerous attempts. If the fire was too strong, it would burn the spirit herbs. If the fire was too weak, it would not be able to extract the medicinal efficacy of the spirit herbs. After his first failure, Xiao Chun looked at the ashes in the furnace, leaving only a pile of black impurities. He could not help but smile bitterly. During this period, Xiao Chun also practiced controlling the heaven fire countless times. He thought that he was proficient enough, but when it came to refining medicine, he was always one step away from the door. There was always a big difference between practice and actual practice. Xiao Chun was also very clear about this. But he was not discouraged. Taking a deep breath, Xiao Chun continued to refine medicine for the second time. Completely forgetting everything in the outside world, Xiao Chen's mind was only focused on refining medicine. With each failure, Xiao Chen also made progress little by little. After 6 hours and 39 failures, Xiao Chen finally succeeded in refining a cauldron of spirit revitalization pills. Although there were only 4 pills, and they were all green, it was already heaven-defying enough. This could be seen from Dao Master Danyan's expression in the room. At the moment when Xiao Chen refined the pills, Dao Master Danyan, who was sleeping with his eyes closed, suddenly opened his eyes and looked at the door in disbelief. This was simply a ghost. It was his first time refining medicine, and he succeeded in just 3 hours. Even Dao Master Danyan himself could not achieve this speed. Back then, when he refined his first elixir, it was also the spirit-restoring elixir. However, it took Dao Master Danyan 1 day and 1 night to succeed. His daughter, Ouyang Roshue, the current king of Heavenly Elixir Valley, also took 16 hours to refine the spirit-restoring elixir and failed hundreds of times before she succeeded. Xiao Chun, on the other hand, was able to succeed in just 6 hours with only 39 failures. Stunned, Xiao Chun came out of the room. Seeing Dao Master Danyan, he said gloomily, "Is my talent a little too poor? I tried 40 times before I succeeded, and only 4 pills were formed, and they were all Qingwen pills." Xiao Chen did not care about the change in Dao Master Danyan's expression and said. Hearing Xiao Chen's words, Dao Master Danyan wanted to give him a kick. This kid was actually depressed. It was known that he could refine the pills 40 times in just 3 hours. Such talent could no longer be described as good. It should be described as heaven-defying. Dao Master Danyan did not know what to say. He looked at Xiao Chun for a long while and said slowly, "Not bad, not bad." His words were full of praise for Xiao Chun, but the corners of Dao Master Danyan's mouth twitched unconsciously. To be honest, Xiao Chen's talent was a big blow to Dao Master Danyan. He had always thought that his talent was not the best, but it was definitely not weak. However, compared with Xiao Chun, Dao Master Danyan felt that his talent was simply trash. Thinking about Xiao Chun, he succeeded in 3 hours. Thinking about himself, it took him a whole day. Not in the mood to continue teaching Xiao Chun, Dao Master Danyan directly threw a storage ring to Xiao Chun. In the storage ring, there were several mortal-level pill recipes and various elixirs needed for alchemy. Looking at Xiao Chun, Dao Master Danyan said, "You can practice by yourself. When you can refine all the elixirs in these recipes, you will be a qualified alchemy apprentice." After saying that, without waiting for Xiao Chen's reply, Dao Master Danyan directly turned and walked into the room. This time, Dao Master Danyan directly closed the door. At this moment, Dao Master Danyan just wanted to be alone and calm down. He had lived so many years in vain. Looking at Dao Master Danyan's back and the closed door, Xiao Chen's face was full of helplessness. What was going on? He was fine just now. Did he think that his talent was too low? He didn't know what Dao Master Danyan was thinking, but if Dao Master Danyan knew what Xiao Chen was thinking, he would probably kick Xiao Chun and tell him to get lost. Shaking his head, Xiao Chen no longer thought about it. In the next few days, Xiao Chun had been learning alchemy from Dao Master Danyan. In total, he gave Xiao Chun 3 mortal-level low-grade elixir recipes, 2 mortal-level mid-grade elixir recipes, and 1 mortal-level high-grade elixir recipe. A total of 6 elixir recipes. After 2 days of studying alchemy, on the 3rd day, Xiao Chun, who had hardly rested, finally succeeded in refining the 6 elixir recipes. Among them, the 3 mortal-level low-grade elixir recipes were not difficult for Xiao Chun, but the 2 mortal-level mid-grade elixir recipes and the mortal-level low-grade elixir recipes made Xiao Chun fail many times. Therefore, it took Xiao Chun 2 whole days to successfully refine the elixir recipes, and this was the result of not sleeping or resting. Xiao Chun had completely forgotten about the time. When he finally succeeded in refining the last pellet of the high-grade mortal-level pellet, a smile appeared on his face. Then, he took the pellet he refined and quickly walked to the room of Danyan Dao Master and knocked on the door. Soon, The door opened and Dao Master Danyan saw Xiao Chun. Only 2 days had passed. Dao Master Danyan naturally didn't think that Xiao Chun had successfully refined 6 kinds of elixir. So he asked, "What's wrong? Is there anything you don't understand?" Dao Master Danyan thought that Xiao Chun had something to ask him, but the next moment, Xiao Chun's answer directly stunned Dao Master Danyan. "No, I have learned everything. These are the 6 elixir recipes, but unfortunately all of them are green, not even red." He didn't come to ask questions, but to tell Dao Master Danyan that he had finished refining. Hearing Xiao Chen's words, Dao Master Danyan was almost in a sluggish state. He took the 6 jade bottles in Xiao Chen's hand and opened them one by one. In just 2 days, Xiao Chun had actually succeeded. Xiao Chun had become a real alchemy apprentice in just 2 days. If it had been someone else, it would have been difficult for them to achieve that even if they had been given a month. After confirming that there was no problem with these elixirs, Dao Master Danyan looked at Xiao Chun, who was slightly tired. For the first time in his life, Dao Master Danyan doubted his own talent. Was he really an alchemy genius? If it was true, then what was Xiao Chun? An alchemy prodigy? Please collect, recommend, reward. Chapter 151. In 2 days, he had successfully refined 7 types of ordinary pills. Although they were all cyan pills, this was already heaven-defying enough. In any case, Dao Master Danyan had never seen anyone who could do this in his entire life. He didn't let Xiao Chun continue to cultivate. Since he had already grasped the basics of refining ordinary pills and had successfully become an alchemy apprentice, Xiao Chun needed some time to consolidate his foundation. Only after he had truly consolidated his foundation could he begin to learn how to refine profound-level pills and become a profound-level alchemist. He gave Xiao Chun more than 10 ordinary pill recipes and told Xiao Chun to study them when he had time. When Xiao Chun was able to refine all the pills in these recipes and reach the red vein stage, Xiao Chun could begin to learn how to refine profound-level pills. Xiao Chun left the Zhongshuan holy man's residence with the pill recipes and various spiritual herbs. He hadn't returned to the dustless residence for 2 days. Xiao Chun didn't inform Qin Shuru beforehand and directly returned to the dustless residence. They didn't tell Xiao Chun about the demonic cultivators. In the eyes of Dao Master Danyan and the ruler of the 9 clouds, Xiao Chun couldn't be of much help at the moment. It was better to let him cultivate in peace. On the way back to the dustless residence, Qin Shuru was naturally very happy to see that Xiao Chun had returned. His previous injuries had completely healed. The two chatted casually for a while before Qin Shuru suggested that they go to the 9 Clouds Market to take a look. The 9 Clouds Market was a market formed spontaneously by many disciples of the 9 Clouds Palace. Many disciples brought treasures they didn't need to sell or barter there. Spiritual stones could be used, points could be used, and items could be exchanged freely. There were many ways to buy things. After so many years, the bazaar had grown bigger and bigger. Even some elders had joined the bazaar. From time to time, they would put their treasures up for sale. It was the first time he'd heard about the continent of the 9 Clouds Bazaar. Thanks to Qin Shuru's suggestion, Xiao Chun was also interested. Then, the two of them took Qin Yao and Qin Luo with them and left the dustless residence. They walked towards the continent of the 9 Clouds Bazaar. The Bazaar of the 9 Firmaments was located in a valley between the 9 peaks of 9 Firmaments Palace. The entire valley was oval-shaped and extremely large. When Xiao Chen's group of 4 arrived at the entrance of the valley, they saw a wide path made of bluestone. It was a winding path that led deep into the valley. At the same time, many disciples had already set up stalls on both sides of the bluestone path. The stalls were neatly arranged on both sides of the bluestone path. As the bluestone path continued to twist and turn, the countless stalls also extended deep into the valley. The bluestone path was filled with people. The entire valley was a boiling cauldron of voices. It wasn't an exaggeration to say that the continent of the 9 Firmaments Palace's bazaar was definitely the most lively place in 9 Firmaments Palace. "I'm afraid this place isn't any weaker than those big cities," Xiao Chun said with a smile as he looked at the extraordinarily lively bazaar. The continent of the Nine Firmaments Palace's disciples can be said to be one of the few places where the disciples of Nine Firmaments Palace gather. There are millions of disciples in Nine Firmaments Palace gathered here. Naturally, it's very lively, replied Qin Shiru when he heard Xiao Chen's words. As for Qing Yao and Qing Luo, they were curiously looking at everything before them. They were amazed by the prosperity of the continent of the Nine Firmaments Palace. At the same time, the bazaar also proved Nine Firmaments Palace's valiant strength. Just a bazaar organized by the disciples could reach such a level. It was obvious that Nine Firmaments Palace was indeed full of talents. Xiao Chun led the three girls into the continent of the Nine Firmaments Bazaar. As he walked, he looked at all kinds of treasures on the countless stalls. There were weapons, medicinal pills, spiritual herbs, and even clothes, food, and so on. There were all kinds of things. Resources for cultivation, daily necessities, everything could be bought here. As they strolled, Xiao Chun didn't lack cultivation resources. After all, he could use the cultivation resources of Sky, Sword Peak freely. The spiritual herbs given to him by Dao Master Danyan were already extremely expensive. Therefore, Xiao Chun didn't have any desire to buy cultivation resources for the time being. Of course, if he was lucky enough to come across some rare and peerless treasures, it would be a different story. However, it was obviously not very likely that he would come across such treasures. Xiao Chun didn't have any desire to buy, but Qin Shu and the other two girls were different. Of course, the three girls weren't interested in the cultivation resources. As people around Xiao Chun, the three girls could be said to have ascended to heaven as well. They didn't lack cultivation resources. What the three girls were interested in now was the extremely ordinary rouge and face powder. Along the way, Qin Shu and the other two girls completely lost their cool when they saw the dazzling rouge and face powder and all kinds of clothes. The purchase made Xiao Chun dumbfounded. Anyway, Xiao Chun was only responsible for paying and receiving the goods behind the three girls. Fortunately, his storage ring was big enough. Otherwise, it wouldn't be able to store so many things. Sister Shuei-ro, look, there's rouge and face powder over there. Let's go take a look, Qing Luo said happily as she held Qin Shuru's hand. After hearing Qing Luo's words, Qin Shuru did not refuse, and the three ladies immediately went to the next stall. Xiao Chun was already used to this. He smiled and was about to follow the three ladies. However, at this moment, Xiao Chun suddenly felt his heart tighten, and an extremely mysterious feeling surfaced in his heart. Xiao Chun involuntarily looked at the stall beside him. Xiao Chun was already used to this. He smiled slightly and was about to follow the three ladies. However, at this moment, Xiao Chun suddenly felt his heart tighten. The items placed in the stall were extremely inconspicuous, but they looked ancient, as though they were dug out from some ancient ruins. However, apart from being old, these items didn't seem to have any other uses. Therefore, no one stopped in front of the stall. Somehow, Xiao Chun stopped in front of the stall and saw that the stall owner was a disciple in the Greater Mystic Aeon stage. His skin was slightly tanned, and perhaps he hadn't had any customers for a long time. Upon seeing Xiao Chun, the disciple immediately introduced the items to Xiao Chun enthusiastically. Senior brother, the treasures here are all unearthed from ancient ruins. Although they don't look good, most of them are rare treasures. The disciple introduced the items in his stall to Xiao Chun without stopping. However, Xiao Chun didn't pay much attention to the disciple's introduction. He unconsciously looked at an old piece of animal skin. For some reason, Xiao Chun felt that this piece of animal skin was attracting him. Please collect, recommend, reward. Chapter 152. His gaze locked onto the old beast's skin. What the disciple said was true. These things were obtained from an ancient site, and they were indeed very old. However, it was a pity that these things were useless. Hence, no one had bought them for a long time. Thinking about it, it was obviously impossible to sell them for money just because they were old. After all, they were not elixirs. The older they were, the more valuable they were. Completely ignoring the disciple's introduction, Xiao Chun stared at the animal skin for a while, then slowly picked it up. This animal skin was just the skin of an ordinary monster, but because of its age, it had become very old. However, what Xiao Chun cared about was not the animal skin itself, but the words written on it. This was a language that Xiao Chun had never seen before. He had no idea what it meant, but when he looked at these words, Xiao Chun found that his blood seemed to be attracted by something and became excited uncontrollably. Everything was too strange. Obviously, he had never seen these words before, but they gave him a sense of familiarity. Obviously, he didn't know the meaning of these words, but his blood was excited uncontrollably. He couldn't explain all this, but one thing was for sure. This animal skin was definitely unusual, at least to him. Looking at the disciple, Xiao Chun said directly, "How much is this animal skin? If senior brother likes it, then I'll give you some. How about 500 low-grade spirit stones?" Hearing Xiao Chun's words, the disciple was immediately happy, but he still pretended to be calm and replied, 500 low-grade spirit stones. Hearing this, Xiao Chun shook his head and said, "At most, 50 low-grade spirit stones." What a joke! A mysterious animal skin that he didn't know the meaning of wanted to sell for 500 low-grade spirit stones. Xiao Chun naturally wouldn't agree. Hearing Xiao Chun's offer, the disciple refused at first, but seeing that Xiao Chun was about to leave, the disciple finally nodded and agreed. After buying this animal skin at the price of 50 low-grade spirit stones, Xiao Chun put it in his storage ring. Although he still didn't know the meaning of the words on this animal skin, Xiao Chun firmly believed in his intuition that this animal skin should be related to him. As for what the relationship was, he believed that he would find out in the future. With the animal skin in hand, Xiao Chun walked in the direction of Qin Shuru and the other two girls. He didn't know if they had finished shopping. Along the way, the three girls were completely shopping. While looking for the three girls, when Xiao Chun saw Qin Shuru and the other two girls from afar, he found that the three girls seemed to be arguing with someone. Qin Shuru stood in front of a young man with a cold face, and the young man glanced at Qin Shuru and the other two girls with a lewd smile on his face. Junior sisters, my name is Wu Chun. The young man's name was Wu Chun. When he first saw Qin Shuru and the other two girls, he was attracted by Qin Shuru's appearance. Thus, he stepped forward to strike a conversation with Qin Shuru. However, his attempt was met with a cold scram. With the exception of Xiao Chun, Qin Shuru was extremely cold to the other men. However, Wu Chun, who was a peak-level heaven's pride of limitless peak, had a dark expression on his face when he heard Qin Shuru's cold scram. Thus, an argument broke out between the two of them. In the face of the extremely cold and unapproachable Qin Shuru, the smile on Wu Chen's face gradually turned cold. He said, "Judging by your clothes, you must be a disciple of Heavenly Sword Peak. Do you know who I am?" Not interested, Qin Shuru replied coldly when he heard Wu Chen's words. Fine, fine. In 9 Firmament's palace, no one has ever dared to speak to me like that," Wu Chen said coldly. As a peak-level heaven's pride of limitless peak, Wu Chun was naturally the target of countless people. After all, being a heaven's pride meant that one was superior to others. Now that he was being publicly humiliated by Qin Shuru, Wu Chun was furious. Just as Wu Chun was thinking about how to get Qin Shuru onto his bed and ravage him, Xiao Chun slowly walked over to Qin Shuru's side. He stood before Qin Shuru and looked at the gloomy Wu Chun. "Scram, before I change my mind," he said. Xiao Chun knew all too well what Wu Chun was thinking. It was nothing more than lust clouding his mind. However, Qin Shuru was his woman. For Wu Chun to have any ideas about her was simply wishful thinking. Xiao Chun had suddenly appeared out of nowhere and mercilessly told him to get lost. Looking at the young man in front of him, who was much more handsome than himself, Wu Chen's anger completely exploded. Without any warning, he directly threw a punch and shouted angrily, "You're courting death." Seeing Wu Chen's attack, the surrounding disciples shook their heads and sighed. Sigh. After offending Wu Chun, this fellow is probably finished. Most of the disciples who said those words were from Limitless Peak. They knew Wu Qin's strength and character well. Thus, they believed that Xiao Qian was finished. In Limitless Peak, anyone who offended Wu Qin would not have a good ending. However, just as the Limitless Peak disciples were saying those words, some of the Heavenly Sword Peak disciples sneered. Finished? I think Wu Qin is the one finished. Do you know who he is? Who is he? Hearing the Heavenly Sword Peak disciples' words, everyone looked at Xiao Qian suspiciously. After carefully sizing him up, many of them realized that Xiao Qian looked familiar. Soon, someone recognized Xiao Qian's identity. He is one of the 10 King of Prides, Xiao Qian. The 10 King of Prides were ranked above all of the heavenly Qian continent's heaven's prides. They were like 10 mountains that constantly pressed down on the heads of countless young people, making it impossible for them to take a single step forward. And Xiao Qian was one of those 10 mountains. Now that Wu Qin's identity had been recognized, all the disciples agreed with the Sky Sword Peak disciples' words. What joke! Wu Qin was indeed a top genius, and it was also true that ordinary disciples couldn't afford to offend him. However, Wu Qin had offended Xiao Qian, and Wu Qin was nothing in front of Xiao Qian. One had to know that above the top geniuses, there were the peerless geniuses, and then the 10 King of Prides. Wu Qin's cultivation was the same as Xiao Qian's, at the complete mysterious Ian stage. However, there was a huge difference in combat strength between the two of them. Facing Wu Qin's punch, Xiao Qian stretched out his right palm and easily blocked Wu Qin's fist. Furthermore, he even held Wu Qin's fist tightly in his hand. Wu Qin's attack was blocked, and he was completely restrained by Xiao Qian. He could not withdraw his right fist at all. Seeing Xiao Qian block his attacks so easily, Wu Qin's expression changed drastically. He looked at Xiao Qian with a grave expression and said with a slightly shocked tone, "Who are you? Damn it, let go of me. Please add, recommend, reward." Chapter 153. His attack had been easily blocked by Xiao Qian. No matter how stupid Wu Qin was, he knew that Xiao Qian's strength was definitely far above his own. He no longer acted as arrogant and domineering as before and cursed angrily at Xiao Qian. Soon, Wu Qin also recognized Xiao Qian's identity. He was one of the 10 great geniuses, the demon sword Xiao Qian. His expression was as ugly as if he had eaten a fly. Wu Qin even felt like dying after offending one of the 10 great geniuses. He no longer stopped speaking. Wu Qin stopped yelling. He had no choice. If it were anyone else, Wu Qin could still use his status to suppress them. However, at this moment, he was facing Xiao Qian. As such, his status, which was like a floating cloud, was not worth mentioning at all. His face was filled with terror, and he did not dare to meet Xiao Qian's eyes. Fortunately, Xiao Qian did not lower himself to his level. He released his hand and said indifferently, "Scram." It was the exact same scram, but this time this scram was the most beautiful sound in Wu Qin's ears. He did not dare to hesitate, and immediately nodded respectfully. Yes, I'll scram. Thank you, senior brother Xiao Qian, for showing mercy." After saying that, Wu Qin turned around and disappeared into the crowd. After Wu Qin left, Xiao Qian turned to look at Qin Shiru and asked, "How is it? Have you bought everything?" Qin Shiru, who originally had an icy expression, revealed a faint smile as he faced Xiao Qian. This smile made Qin Shiru even more beautiful, causing the surrounding male disciples to be stunned. "Yes, we've bought everything," Qin Shiru said. "Then let's go." "We're going back," Xiao Qian said. Xiao Qian's group left under the gazes of all the disciples. Of course, before they left, Xiao Qian bought a few more swords. There were both mortal and profound swords to nourish his heavenly way sword embryo. Although he could go to the heavenly sword hall to obtain swords of various grades at any time, his heavenly way sword embryo was like a bottomless pit. It had already devoured close to 100 swords during this period of time, but it still did not undergo much of a transformation. From the looks of it, the amount of resources required to complete the transformation of the heavenly way sword embryo was astronomical. Moreover, he could not really use up all the resources of the Heavenly Sword Hall. Otherwise, what would all the disciples of the Heavenly Sword Peak use? Therefore, Xiao Chan would buy a few swords when he saw them. After spending tens of thousands of spirit stones, Xiao Chan bought more than a dozen mortal grade swords and 3 profound grade swords. Only then did the group return to the Heavenly Sword Peak with satisfaction. Next, he had the Heavenly Way Sword Embryo devour the swords. As the number of swords devoured by the Heavenly Way Sword Embryo increased, the number of swords it could devour every day kept increasing. In the beginning, it could only devour 3 profound swords a day. Now, however, the Heavenly Way Sword Embryo could devour 5 profound swords, or 10 mortal swords a day. Its appetite was growing bigger and bigger. At this rate, Chun Feng would have to keep searching for various types of swords. Otherwise, he would not be able to ensure that the Heavenly Way Sword Embryo could devour enough swords. You've devoured so many swords. After you complete the transformation, do not disappoint me. After feeding the Heavenly Way Sword Embryo the last profound sword, Xiao Chun smiled. Then, he began his cultivation session. Night slowly fell, and Xiao Chun entered his daily routine of cultivation. At the same time, in the residence of the Peak Master of Holy Maiden Peak, Su Jun, a beautiful young woman in purple robes, was pacing back and forth within the courtyard. Judging by her face, it was clear that she had something weighing on her mind. The young woman's name was Lu Yun. She was an ordinary disciple of Nine Firmaments Palace's Holy Maiden Peak. In Nine Firmaments Palace, Lu Yun was very ordinary. However, very few people knew that Lu Yun was a direct descendant of the Greenwave Empire's imperial family. Her father was the current emperor of the Greenwave Empire. Her family background was extremely illustrious. The Cerulean Waves Empire was an overlord that was second only to the 7 overlords of the Central Plains. Yet, as the eldest princess of the Cerulean Waves Empire, Lu Yun was currently so worried. It was obvious that she had encountered a great deal of trouble. Unlike Qin Shiru's cold beauty, Lu Yun gave off a dignified aura. This was probably due to her identity as the eldest princess of the Greenwave Empire. As a princess, Lu Yun had stood above everyone since she was young. It was only natural for her to develop a dignified aura. She paced back and forth as if she was waiting for something. At this moment, Su Zhan's figure appeared in front of Lu Yun without warning. Seeing Su Zhan appear, Lu Yun hurried forward and asked anxiously, "Peak Master, how is it?" The Lord Ruler did not agree. Su Zhan shook her head helplessly in response to Lu Yun's question. The Lord Ruler of the Nine Firmaments did not agree. Hearing that, Lu Yun's face sank and she asked in despair, "Why?" The older generation experts of the Mu family did not take action as well. If our Nine Firmaments Palace sends someone to interfere with the Greenwave Empire, it will inevitably become enemies with the Mu family. The Lord Ruler has more important matters to attend to right now. Thus, Nine Firmaments Palace cannot spare any extra manpower to deal with the Mu family. Thus, the experts of the palace cannot interfere, Su Zhan replied. Nine Firmaments Palace could not help the Greenwave Empire. After receiving that answer, Lu Yun sat down on a stone bench within the courtyard. At present, the Greenwave Empire situation had reached a critical juncture. Or rather, it would be more accurate to say that the Lu family situation had reached a critical juncture. 7 days ago, a peerless genius from the Mu family known as Mu Feng had come to the Greenwave Empire. He had taken a fancy to the youngest princess of the Lu family, Lu Yun's younger sister, Lu Qingyu. Relying on his identity as a lineal descendant of the Mu family, Mu Feng directly proposed marriage. Lu Yun's father, Lu Zhanhai, found it difficult to refuse. After all, if he refused Mu Feng, it would be equivalent to offending the Mu family. Although the Aquamarine Wave Empire was powerful, it was difficult to resist the Mu family. Any highest elder of the Mu family in the Dao Master Realm could easily destroy the entire Aquamarine Wave Empire. If it was only because Mu Feng was forcing the marriage, it would not have been a big deal. What the Liu family found most difficult to accept was that Mu Feng wanted to marry Liu Qingyu because she had the same Yin's spiritual constitution as Qin Shiru. What truly moved Mu Feng's heart was Liu Qingyu's Yin's spiritual constitution. If Mu Feng were to obtain Liu Qingyu's Yin's spiritual constitution, he would surely kick her aside. In the end, Liu Qingyu would face an incomparably miserable future. They had originally thought that Nine Firmaments Palace would be able to help. However, due to the experts from the Mu family, the ruler of the Nine Firmaments Palace did not take action. Thus, it was inconvenient for Nine Firmaments Palace to send experts over. More importantly, the ruler of the Nine Firmaments Palace was currently focusing all his efforts on tracking down demonic cultivators. He simply could not spare any time to waste on the Mu family. It's over. Without the experts from Nine Firmaments Palace, the Green Wave Empire is simply incapable of resisting the threat from the Mu family. Tears flowed down from their eyes. Seeing that, Su Zhan slowly walked over to Liu Yun's side and sat down. Liu Yun, things may not be as bad as you think. It is not that the Lord Ruler is ignoring this matter. Rather, things have not reached that stage yet. Do you understand? Truth be told, this matter is not difficult to deal with. My Nine Firmaments Palace is not afraid of the Mu family, after all. Begging for collection, begging recommendation, begging reward. Chapter 154. As an ordinary disciple of Holy Maiden Peak, Liu Yun could only rely on Nine Firmaments Palace for this matter. The Green Wave's empire alone could not go against the Mu family. When Su Zhan said that the ruler of the Nine Firmaments had rejected her request, Liu Yun had fallen into despair. Hearing Su Zhan's words, however, Liu Yun became like a drowning person grasping at straws. She hastily asked, "Peak Master, what do you mean? If the older generation experts of Nine Firmaments Palace did not take action, how could they overcome this crisis?" Su Zhan smiled in response to Liu Yun's urgent question. At present, the older generation experts of the Mu family have yet to take action. As for the Lord Ruler, he did not intend to ignore this matter. You are a disciple of my Nine Firmaments Palace. After all, my Nine Firmaments Palace has the responsibility to protect you. Truth be told, the Lord Ruler's intentions are very simple. If the older generation experts of the Mu family do not show themselves, the same goes for the older generation experts of my Nine Firmaments Palace. Naturally, if the older generation experts of the Mu family do intervene, my Nine Firmaments Palace will not sit idly by. However, Mu Feng is the only one in the Green Wave's empire. Since that is the case, my Nine Firmaments Palace will only need to send out the younger generation's geniuses. If the Mu family has peerless geniuses, so does my Nine Firmaments Palace, said Su Zhan slowly. Hearing Su Zhan's words, hope rekindled in Liu Yun's eyes. Truth be told, she had been too anxious earlier. She had failed to comprehend the true meaning behind Su Zhan's words. It was not that the ruler of the Nine Firmaments did not care. Rather, it was not yet time for the older generation experts to intervene. Since it was a matter of the younger generation, it would be fine to send the younger generation. Facing Liu Yun's anxious gaze, Su Zhan smiled. All right, tomorrow, I will have Su Ling accompany you to the Green Wave's empire. With her around, there is no need to fear Mu Feng. Su Ling was to accompany Liu Yun back to the Green Wave's empire. Hearing Su Zhan's words, Liu Yun's expression eased somewhat. Su Ling was one of the few peerless geniuses of Nine Firmaments Palace. At the same time, she was also Su Zhan's personal disciple. With her around, there was no need to fear Mu Feng. Even if she could not defeat Mu Feng, she was more than enough to fight him. Directly kneeling down in front of Su Zhan, Liu Yun sincerely thanked her. This disciple thanks Peak Master. There's no need for that. You are a disciple of my Holy Maiden Peak. I will naturally help you. Go back first. Tomorrow morning, Su Ling will come to find you. At that time, you two will go to the Ocean Waves Empire together. Su Zhan smiled. On the morning of the second day, Su Ling indeed brought 8 disciples from the Saintess Peak to find Liu Yun. There were a total of 10 people in the group, and they rode on the golden-winged great pung eagles and left the Sanus Peak, heading towards the ocean waves empire. Originally, the matter of the cerulean waves empire had nothing to do with Xiao Chun. However, the plans of men were always inferior to the plans of the heavens. In just a few days, Xiao Chun would be drawn into this storm, and the cerulean waves empire would quickly become the focus of everyone's attention. This was because this was the place where the first clash between two proud kings would occur. The two kings of heaven's favorites clashed for the first time in the capital of the ocean waves empire using the simplest and most brutal method. It was also the first clash between the two kings of heaven's favorites that ignited the flames of war between the 10 kings of heaven's favorites. In the next few decades, the entire heavenly Chun continent would become the stage for the 10 kings of heaven's favorites. The kings of heaven's favorites contended for hegemony. This was the description of the chaotic battle between the 10 kings of heaven's favorites. It was concise and comprehensive, and in the battle between the 10 kings of heaven's favorites, the other kings of heaven's favorites were reduced to mere background characters and were overshadowed. Of course, this was all in the future. At this moment, after a night of cultivation, Xiao Chun was practicing the 9th heaven sword finger in the dustless residence. Xiao Chun had already completely grasped the first finger, Chun Jun, and the second finger, Long Quan. However, Xiao Chun still found it difficult to grasp the third finger, Tai. It wasn't an issue of talent, but his own spiritual energy was unable to support the Tai's sword finger. After trying a few times, Xiao Chun helplessly sighed and said, "It seems that I still need to break through to the earth realm before I can practice the Tai's sword finger." The Tai's sword finger was equivalent to an earth realm martial technique. With Xiao Chen's current cultivation level, it was naturally difficult for him to successfully practice it. Just as Xiao Chun stopped practicing the Tai, a sword finger, Qin Shiru walked over with breakfast. He smiled at Xiao Chun and said, "Let's eat. You woke up early in the morning to cultivate. Even if you want to work hard, you still need to eat." "All right, let's eat together," Xiao Chun replied with a smile when he heard that. While eating the breakfast prepared by Qin Yao and Qin Luo, Xiao Chun asked, "How's it going? Have you had any problems with your cultivation recently?" Xiao Chun had always been brooding over Qin Shiru's mysterious and terrifying cold qi. Therefore, Xiao Chun was very concerned about Qin Shiru's cultivation. He was afraid that something would happen to her. In response to Xiao Chun's question, Qin Shiru replied with a smile, "Don't worry. I've already broken through to the small completion of Mystic Aeon Realm." He had already broken through to the small completion of Mystic Aeon Realm. Xiao Chun was slightly stunned when he heard Qin Shiru's words. Qin Shiru's cultivation speed was indeed too fast. After confirming that Qin Shiru was fine with his cultivation, Xiao Chun relaxed. However, after a pause, Qin Shiru said, "You should take care of Qin Yao and Qin Luo when you have time. I think they're about to break through to the Mystic Aeon Realm in the next 2 days. They're just a little bit away from it." Qin Yao and Qin Luo had followed him all the way from the Danyang region. From the channel-opening realm warriors to the great completion of the Yellow Realm, Qin Yao and Qin Luo had made great progress. Upon hearing that they were preparing to break through to the Mystic Aeon Realm, Xiao Chun nodded slightly and said, "All right, I'll visit them when I have time and help them break through to the Mystic Aeon Realm." Previously, Xiao Chun did not know that the two girls had already begun to break through to the Mystic Aeon Realm. Now that he knew, he naturally wanted to help them. After all, Qin Yao and Qin Luo were the closest people to him. On the same day, Xiao Chun found Qin Yao and Qin Luo and provided them with a large amount of resources. He even stood guard for them and gave them pointers on what they needed to pay attention to during their breakthrough. While practicing, he guided them to break through to the Mystic Aeon Realm. Just like that, 5 days passed very quickly. With Xiao Chen's unreserved help, Qin Yao and Qin Luo successfully broke through to the Mystic Aeon Realm. Looking at the happy faces of the two girls, Xiao Chun smiled faintly and warned them to stabilize their foundation well. After that, Xiao Chun left. On the day that Qin Yao and Qin Luo broke through to the Mystic Aeon Realm, a young man in a golden python robe arrived at Saintis Peak. He was about 18 or 19 years old. His cultivation was at the beginning of the mystic Aeon realm. He had a dignified appearance, but his brows were filled with deep worry. The young man's name was Lu Yu. He was the crown prince of the Bibo Empire and Lu Yun's younger brother. This time, Lu Yu came to Saintis Peak to ask for help. This was because Su Ling, Lu Yun, and the 8 disciples of Saintis Peak had been detained by the Mu family in the imperial capital of the Bibo Empire. Please collect, recommend, reward. Chapter 155. Lu Yu's arrival did not cause any commotion within Nine Firmament's palace. At any rate, not many people knew about what happened in the Greenwave Empire. Only the educated youths of Holy Maiden Peak knew about it. The other 8 peaks did not. After going through the various levels of reports, Lu Yu's personal visit to Nine Firmament's palace finally reached Su Zhan's ears. Hearing that Lu Yu had come, Su Zhan immediately sensed something amiss. Thus, she met up with the young crown prince of the Greenwave's empire in the Grand Hall of Holy Maiden Peak. Sitting on the main seat, she calmly looked down at Lu Yu. This was the first time Lu Yu was facing someone as important as Su Zhan. Thus, he was clearly nervous. At any rate, the extremely beautiful woman before him was one of the 9 peaks of Nine Firmament's palace, the true leader of Holy Maiden Peak. She was an existence that could destroy the Greenwave Empire with a wave of her hand. Even if Lu Yu's father, the current Greenwave Empire's Lu Zhenhai, was here, he would have to be respectful. His head was lowered, showing none of the arrogance of a crown prince. Facing such a nervous Lu Yu, Su Zhan did not waste any time and went straight to the point. Why do you want to see me? Reporting to Peak Lord, the pride of Mu family, Mu He, has appeared in the Greenwave Empire's imperial capital. Senior sister Su Ling and the other disciples of Holy Maiden Peak have been captured by him. They are currently being held captive in the Greenwave Empire's imperial capital. He truthfully reported what happened in the Greenwave Empire's imperial capital to Su Zhan. Hearing the name Mu He, Su Zhan's face sank. Originally, she had thought that sending Su Ling would be a surefire way to go. Unexpectedly, the pride of Mu family, Shui Mu He, had appeared in the Greenwave Empire. Naturally, Su Ling was no match for him. According to Lu Yu, after Su Ling and the others arrived in the Greenwave Empire, they had indeed suppressed Mu Feng. However, 3 days ago, one of the 10 great prides of Heavenly Chun mainland, Mu He, had suddenly entered the Greenwave Empire's imperial capital. In a domineering manner, he suppressed Su Ling, Lu Yun, and the other disciples of Holy Maiden Peak in one fell swoop. Additionally, he had shamelessly detained the 4 of them. He even demanded that Holy Maiden Peak personally send someone to the Greenwave Empire's imperial capital to apologize before releasing them. After listening to Lu Yu's narration, Su Zhan, who was sitting on the main seat, remained silent. There wasn't any joy or sadness on her face. The appearance of Mu He had indeed caught Su Zhan off guard. Even the proud king had been sent out. She didn't know if this was the intention of the upper echelons of the Mu family, or if Mu Feng had personally asked Mu He to help. His fingers gently tapped on the armrest of the chair. Facing the silent Su Zhan, Lu Yu didn't dare to say much. The situation had been reported to Su Zhan truthfully. Now it's up to Su Zhan to decide. After a long while, Su Zhan looked down at Lu Yu, who had lowered his head and was silent. Naturally, he knew that Lu Yu had come here to ask for reinforcements. Originally, Mu Feng was already difficult for the Ocean Waves Empire to contend with. Now, there was an even more terrifying Mu He. The Ocean Waves Empire was naturally powerless to resist. Men, bring His Highness Lu Yu away to rest. She didn't give Lu Yu an answer on the spot, but ordered people to arrange for Lu Yu to rest first. Regarding Su Zhan's decision, Lu Yu naturally didn't dare to have the slightest objection. Under the lead of an elder, Lu Yu quickly left the main palace. Su Zhan also left Holy Maiden Peak and went straight to the mountain where the ruler of the continent of the 9 firmaments resided. Muhi's appearance had escalated the situation to a whole new level. If it wasn't handled properly, Nine Firmament's palace and the Mu clan could become enemies. Besides, among the same generation as Holy Maiden Peak, no one could resist Muhi. Suzhun had no choice but to ask the ruler of the continent of the Nine Firmaments for help again. Soon, she arrived at the ruler of the continent of the Nine Firmaments. After waiting for around 2 hours, Suzhun finally saw the ruler of the continent of the Nine Firmaments. She told him everything that had happened in the Ocean Waves Empire. Hearing that, the ruler of the continent of the Nine Firmaments smiled faintly. The king of geniuses of the Mu clan, Muhi, has already appeared in the Ocean Waves Empire. The ruler of the continent of the Nine Firmaments didn't have the slightest change because of Muhi's appearance. To the ruler of the continent of the Nine Firmaments, although the 10 kings of geniuses were terrifyingly talented, the ruler of the continent of the Nine Firmaments still didn't take them seriously. Seeing that the ruler of the continent of the Nine Firmaments didn't seem to care at all, Suzhun said helplessly, "Great ruler, what should we do now? Should we just let it go? Or should we send the older generation experts? Send the experts of the older generation to go? Haha, is my Nine Firmaments palace so weak? The moment the king of geniuses appeared, we have to send the older generation experts? Are we trying to tell the world that no one in the younger generation of my Nine Firmaments palace can compete with Xuemu?" The ruler of the continent of the Nine Firmaments snorted disdainfully when he heard Suzhun's words. To the ruler of the continent of the Nine Firmaments palace, sending the older generation experts to deal with the king of geniuses was a very shameful thing, because it meant that no one in the younger generation of Nine Firmaments palace could compete with Xuemu. When Suzhun heard that, she said, "Then what should we do? Don't we care about the Ocean Waves Empire anymore?" "Of course we care about it, but we won't send the older generation experts. Since the king of geniuses from the Mu clan has appeared, shouldn't the king of geniuses from my Nine Firmaments palace show up as well?" said the ruler of the continent of the Nine Firmaments palace, smiling indifferently. When Suzhun heard that, a silhouette in white clothes appeared in her mind. What the ruler of the continent of the Nine Firmaments palace meant was obvious. Since the king of geniuses from the Mu clan had appeared in the imperial capital of the Ocean Waves Empire, Nine Firmaments palace could send the king of geniuses as well. The one from Celestial Sword Peak, Xiao Chun, was called the Bewitching Sword. Suzhun looked at the ruler of the continent of the Nine Firmaments strangely. Should we send Xiao Chun? Even though she already knew the answer, Suzhun still looked eager. The king of geniuses was going to fight. The ruler of the continent of the Nine Firmaments palace and the Mu clan were going to have an earth-shattering battle. When the ruler of the continent of the Nine Firmaments saw Suzhun's eagerness, he smiled even more broadly. Then his chi rose up in the air, and the wind and clouds stirred. Dazzling lights appeared in the ruler's eyes, and a ruler's talisman with the words "Continent of the Nine Firmaments" written on it flew up into the air. After that, the ruler of the continent of the Nine Firmaments spoke confidently. "Xiao Chun, listen to me. Take my talisman and give me my orders. The king of geniuses from the Mu clan, Muhi, has captured 10 disciples of the Nine Firmaments palace in the imperial capital of the Ocean Waves Empire. Now, Xiao Chun, the king of geniuses from the Nine Firmaments palace, must go to the imperial capital of the Ocean Waves Empire and bring the 10 disciples back safely." Suzhun heard the ruler's voice clearly. Not only that, but the entire Nine Firmaments palace also heard the ruler's voice. Everybody on the 9 peaks of Nine Firmaments palace heard the ruler's command. "Please add me to your collection, recommend me, reward me." Chapter 156. The sudden appearance of the sovereign heavenly order stunned everyone from Nine Firmaments palace. This was an order personally issued by the sovereign of the Nine Firmaments palace. It had been many years since a sovereign heavenly order had appeared in Nine Firmaments palace. All the disciples, attendants, elders, and even the peak lords turned their gazes towards the sky. In the beginning, they were all shocked by the heavenly sovereign's heavenly order. However, They quickly recollected themselves and turned their gazes towards Heavenly Sword Peak. The king of geniuses from a Mu family has appeared in the Green Waves Empire's imperial capital. He even captured 10 disciples from Holy Maiden Peak. Not only that, there's also our Holy Maiden Peak's peerless genius. Senior Sister Su Ling is among them. What? Senior Sister Su Ling was also captured by Mu He and is being held captive in the Green Waves Empire's imperial capital? Many of the disciples began discussing the matter. It did not take long before news of what happened in the Green Waves Empire spread through the 9 peaks. When they found out that even Su Ling was being held captive by Mu He in the Green Waves Empire, they were shocked. However, they then heard that Mu He wanted the experts from 9 Firmament Palace to personally head to the Green Waves Empire to apologize before releasing them. Seeing that, many of the disciples grew furious. This was simply going too far. He wanted the experts from 9 Firmaments Palace to apologize to him. What did this mean? Did it mean that 9 Firmaments Palace was inferior to the Mu family? Or did 9 Firmaments Palace not dare to offend the Mu family? As the news of what happened in the Green Waves Empire spread, the furious curses of the disciples from the 9 peaks rose one after another. What an arrogant Mu family! Do they really think that there is no one in our 9 Firmaments Palace? That's right. Do they really think that only their king of geniuses has a king of geniuses and our 9 Firmaments Palace does not have one? The Lord Sovereign is wise. The Mu family has a king of geniuses, but so does our 9 Firmaments Palace. Let's have senior brother Xiao Chun defeat Mu He. Let's see if the Mu family can continue to act arrogantly then. Mu He's arrogance had thoroughly infuriated the many disciples of 9 Firmaments Palace. At that very moment, the disciples of the 9 Firmaments Palace, who were usually fighting both openly and covertly, were united. While condemning Mu He, they were also cheering Xiao Chen on. Quite a number of them had even gathered towards Heavenly Sword Peak. They wanted to send Xiao Chun off and witness with their own eyes how the proud monarch of 9 Firmament Palace would reign supreme over the Green Wave Empire and fight 300 battles with Mu He. More and more disciples were gathering towards Heavenly Sword Peak. At the same time, the disciples from Heavenly Sword Peak were the first to gather outside the Immaculate Residence. At that very moment, Xiao Chun had unquestionably become the focus of all the disciples from 9 Firmaments Palace. Inside the Immaculate Residence, Xiao Chun smiled wryly as he looked at the sovereign's heavenly command descending from the sky. Qin Shu, who was beside him, asked worriedly, "Husband, that Mu He is also one of the 10 great geniuses. Will you be in danger?" After learning that the sovereign of the 9 Firmaments had personally given the order for Xiao Chun to head to the Green Wave Empire, Qin Shiru could not help but feel worried. It was not because he did not have confidence in Xiao Chun. Rather, it was because Xiao Chen's opponent this time was different from the past. Mu He was a bona fide member of the 10 great geniuses. He was not someone Xiao Chen's previous opponents could compare with. In the face of Qin Shiru's concern, Xiao Chun smiled and said, "Don't worry. It'll be fine." Xiao Chun signaled Qin Shiru not to worry and instructed her to wait for his return at the Heavenly Sword Peak. Afterwards, Xiao Chun left the Immaculate Residence alone. As soon as he opened the door to the Immaculate Residence, Xiao Chun saw many Heavenly Sword Peak disciples gathered around. When they saw Xiao Chun come out, they all shouted one after another, "Senior brother Xiao Chun, you must make Mu He pay the price." That's right. He's so arrogant. Senior brother Xiao Chun, teach him a lesson. Everyone was filled with anticipation for Xiao Chun's departure and the upcoming battle between the 4 great geniuses. Xiao Chun smiled in the face of everyone's cheers. Then, with Qin Heng, Qi Yin, Mo Jie, and his other friends leading the way, he headed towards the Heavenly Sword Peak's main hall. There was a sea of people along the way, especially when they arrived at the Heavenly Sword Peak's main hall. It was completely packed. In the end, it was Zhang Xian who stepped forward to stabilize the situation, allowing Xiao Chun to escape from the encirclement. After entering the main hall, Zhang Xian, Zhang Long, Zhang Yun, Lu Yu, and Su Zhen had already arrived. Lu Yu's eyes were filled with curiosity as he watched Xiao Chan slowly walk into the hall in snow-white clothes. He wanted to see just what was so special about Xiao Chan, who was listed as one of the 10 four great geniuses together with the terrifying Mu He. He did not dare to openly size up Xiao Chan and could only secretly spy on him. Xiao Chan obviously did not notice Lu Yu. Although Lu Yu was the crown prince of an empire, in Xiao Chen's eyes, this title was no different from a joke. He directly bowed towards Song Xian and the other three and said, "Greetings, Master, Martial Uncles, and Peak Master Sujan. Chun, during this trip to the Aqua Waves Empire, you must not disrespect our 9 Firmaments Palace. You must bring back those 10 disciples safely." Seated in the main seat, Song Xian said with a serious expression. His voice was also filled with a rarely seen dignity. It was obvious that Song Xian attached great importance to this matter. This was not only for 9 Firmaments Palace's dignity, but more importantly, this battle would affect the Heavenly Sword Peak's position among the 9 peaks. If Xiao Chan could successfully bring back those 10 disciples, the Heavenly Sword Peak's position among the 9 peaks would rise greatly. In the face of Song Xian's expectations, Xiao Chan said in a neither servile nor overbearing manner, "This disciple will do his best to not disappoint Master and the ruler." After receiving Xiao Chen's answer, Song Xian said, "Good. Then you and His Highness Lu you can set off." The golden-winged great rock had long since been prepared. Next, Xiao Chun and Lu Yu walked out of the great hall. Under the witness of countless disciples, Xiao Chun mounted the golden-winged great rock. It was worth mentioning that before mounting the golden-winged great rock, Lu Yu hesitated. In the end, he mustered up the courage to ask Xiao Chun, "Senior brother Xiao Chun, are the 2 of us going alone?" Seeing that Xiao Chun did not appear to be prepared, Lu Yu asked. His intention was to remind Xiao Chun if there was a need to bring some disciples from 9 Firmaments Palace with him. However, in the face of Lu Yu's concern, Xiao Chun simply replied, "It's just Mu. I alone am enough." After saying that, the many disciples watched as Xiao Chun mounted the golden-winged great rock. With an eagle cry, he disappeared into the horizon. Lu Yu was also mounted on the golden-winged great rock. However, he was behind Xiao Chun. Watching Xiao Chen's back, Lu Yu's earlier words echoed in his ears. "It's just Mu. I alone am enough." Suddenly, Lu Yu understood why Xiao Chun could be ranked alongside the terrifying Mu as one of the 10 great prides. At the same time, Lu Yu helplessly realized that compared to Xiao Chun, Mu He, and the others, he was simply too weak. There was no comparison at all. Xiao Chun set off, carrying the heavenly order from the ruler of the 9 firmaments as he headed towards the Ocean Waves Empire. Meanwhile, in the imperial palace of the Ocean Waves Empire, there was a beautiful garden. A young man in blood-red robes stood proudly in the middle of the garden. Behind him was Mu Feng, who stood respectfully. "Cousin, you told Lu Yu to send the news back. Will 9 Firmaments Palace really send someone over? After finding out that cousin is here, who among the younger generation from 9 Firmaments Palace would dare come?" Hearing Mu Feng's words, the young man in blood-red robes smiled. "You are wrong. There is one person who dares to come. As for me, the only reason I am still here is to wait for him. 9 Firmaments Palace's King of Pride, Yao Sword Xiao Chun." Chapter 157. The blood-robed young man was none other than the king of geniuses from the Mu clan, Mu He, who had the title of Xue Mu. He had deliberately sent Lu Yu to 9 Firmaments Palace to inform them of the situation. His objective was to wait for Xiao Chen's arrival. Now that he had appeared in the Greenwave Empire's imperial capital, in all of 9 Firmaments Palace, only Xiao Chen would dare to challenge him. Additionally, Mu He believed that the ruler of the 9 Firmaments Palace could only dispatch Xiao Chun. This was a matter for the younger generation. If 9 Firmaments Palace were to dispatch an expert from the older generation, it would be the equivalent of admitting that the younger generation of 9 Firmaments Palace was inferior to the Mu clan. With the exception of Xiao Chun, there was no one else the ruler of the Nine Firmaments Palace could use. Mui's calm voice was filled with anticipation. It was as though he had been looking forward to meeting Xiao Chun for a long time now. In contrast to Mui's calm demeanor, when he heard the name Xiao Chun, Mu Feng's face sank. Everything that had happened in the city of the Medicine King was still fresh in his mind. Despite being besieged by over 10 geniuses, Xiao Chun had still been able to effortlessly defeat all of them. It was like a nightmare that kept replaying in Mu Feng's mind. Every time he thought of Xiao Chun, Mu Feng's heart would be filled with hatred. Naturally, at the same time of hatred, there was also fear. Sensing the change in Mu Feng's expression, He turned around. A mocking smile appeared on his face as he said, "You are an idiot, to think that you can rely on numbers to suppress a king of geniuses. You only have yourself to blame for what happened in the city of the Medicine King. Remember, when facing a king of geniuses, you will never be qualified to speak to him as an equal. In the future, when you meet other kings of geniuses, I advise you to stay far away from them. Don't disgrace the king of geniuses." Mui did not appear to have any intention of avenging Mu Feng. Perhaps, in his opinion, Mu Feng was simply courting death. Who asked him to disrespect a king of geniuses? After saying that, Mui did not wait for Mu Feng's reply. Instead, he slowly walked out of the garden. Mui waited for Xiao Chun. At the same time, Xiao Chun hurried towards the Jade Wave Empire. Even though more than a year had passed since the 10 young geniuses had appeared, there hadn't been any real battles between the young geniuses. Xiao Chun and Mui's battle was about to start. As for the ruler of the continent of the Nine Clouds, he was the one who had personally pushed Xiao Chun onto the stage. Under the golden-winged Great Peng Bird's rapid journey, Xiao Chun and Luo Feng arrived outside the imperial capital of the Emerald Waves Empire in a short period of 1.5 days. Lu Yu asked Xiao Chun cautiously as he gazed at the magnificent city. "Senior brother Xiao Chun, what do you think of us?" Xiao Chun knew what Lu Yu was about to say, but before he could finish, he said, "Let's go straight to the palace. There's no need to hide." He had no intention of hiding at all. This time, he came to the Emerald Waves Empire just to meet Mu. Since they would have to fight sooner or later, why bother wasting time? After hearing Xiao Chun's words, Lu Yu did not say anything else. Along the way, Lu Yu had a preliminary understanding of Xiao Chun's character. Even though he seemed amiable and approachable on the surface, the arrogance in his heart was no less than Mu's. Perhaps this was the pride of being one of the 10 young geniuses. Riding the golden-winged Great Peng Bird, they flew straight into the imperial capital and headed straight for the palace. Unlike Xiao Chun's hometown, Lingfeng country, the Emerald Waves Empire was much stronger. At the same time, the imperial capital was much larger. It was at least 5 times larger than Lingfeng country's imperial capital. Along the way, the citizens of the Emerald Waves Empire were stunned when they saw the golden-winged Great Peng Bird flying across the sky. Flying was forbidden in the imperial capital, and yet, someone was brazenly riding a flying Yao beast into the imperial capital. Was this not a provocation to the empire's prestige? The ordinary citizens believed that Xiao Chun and Lu Yu were in for a bad time. However, the disciples of the great families and some powerful cultivators were able to see further into the future. Mui's appearance in the imperial capital was no longer a secret. Additionally, it was also no secret that he had captured the disciples of Nine Firmaments Palace. At present, Su Ling and the other 10 disciples were tied to wooden frames within the imperial palace's main square. News of that had spread throughout the imperial capital. Additionally, the golden-winged Great Peng Bird was the mount of Nine Firmaments Palace. Thus, many cultivators were able to guess that the newcomers must be from Nine Firmaments Palace. Additionally, it was clear that they were here for Mu and the other 10 disciples from Holy Maiden Peak. I wonder who these people from Nine Firmaments Palace are? They should be experts from the older generation. At any rate, who among the younger generation can stand up to Mu? Someone said, "Did you forget someone? Nine Firmaments Palace also has a king of prides." Hearing that, someone beside him spoke up. "You mean Yao Sword Xiao Chun?" "That's right. The way I see it, this newcomer is most likely Yao Sword Xiao Chun. At any rate, Nine Firmament's palace cannot afford to lose face. They will not send experts from the older generation to deal with matters of the younger generation. If that is the case, doesn't that mean a war between the King of Prides is about to erupt? Very likely. Come, let's hurry to the Imperial Palace. We might be able to personally witness the first great battle between the King of Prides. Some of the more intelligent ones had guessed that the newcomer was most likely Xiao Chun. In an instant, many cultivators and members of the great families within the imperial capital rushed towards the Imperial Palace. As they were about to make their move, Mu He, who was in the Imperial Palace, suddenly opened his eyes. Two rays of red light shot out from his eyes as he looked towards the horizon. Mu He smiled and said, "He's finally here." Clearly, Mu He had already sensed Xiao Chen's aura. Bringing Mu Feng with him, the two of them quickly arrived at the main square of the Imperial Palace of the Greenwave Empire. There were 10 wooden crosses there. A disciple of Holy Maiden Peak was hanging on each of the crosses. Surprisingly, the peerless genius of Holy Maiden Peak, Su Ling, was among them. At the same time that Mu He and Mu Feng appeared, the Emperor of Greenwave Empire, Lu Zhanhai, also appeared with a group of civil and military officials. Seeing Mu He's arrival, Su Ling snorted and said, "Mu He, if you have what it takes, then kill me. You want my men from Nine Firmament's palace to apologize to you? Dream on." Hearing Su Ling's furious scolding, Mu He smiled and said, "How can a defeated general speak of bravery? Whether or not I kill you makes no difference to me. Consider yourself lucky today to be able to witness a battle between two King of Prides. However, I wonder, can your King of Pride from Nine Firmament's palace rescue you fellows?" That's right. He did not take Su Ling's words to heart at all. In Mu He's opinion, someone like Su Ling was not worth mentioning. Hearing Mu He's words, Su Ling's face sank. A battle between the King of Prides? Nine Firmament's palace has sent out a King of Prides? Heavenly Sword Peaks, Yao, Sword Xiao Chun? She thought to herself in shock. It was at that moment that a massive, golden-winged great rock, exuding an awe-inspiring aura, arrived above the Imperial Palace. It slowly descended, and Lu Yu and Xiao Chun jumped down from the back of the great rock. Please collect, recommend, reward. Chapter 158. The King of Pride of the Mu family, Mu He, and the King of Pride of Nine Firmament's palace, Xiao Chun. The two kings of pride finally met. As Xiao Chun jumped down from the eagle's back, the look in Mu He's eyes turned sharp. At the same time, the corners of his lips curled into a smile. Although this was their first meeting, the first impression Mu He got from Xiao Chun was one of extreme sharpness. This was an extremely powerful fellow who could not be underestimated. He did not underestimate Xiao Chun in the slightest. At the same time, Xiao Chen's gaze also fell upon Mu He. His eyes flashed with fighting spirit. So, this is the King of Pride of the Mu family? Compared to the eliminated Gu Lei, Su Mu could not be mentioned in the same breath. The two of them looked at each other. As for the others, after Xiao Chen's appearance, their gazes fell upon Xiao Chun. This was the first time the civil and military officials of the Green Waves Empire and Emperor Lu Zhanhai were meeting the King of Pride of Nine Firmament's palace. They carefully regarded Xiao Chun, seemingly wanting to see through him. Like the cultivators from the Cerulean Waves Empire, Su Ling and the others' gazes fell upon Xiao Chun as well. Heavenly Sword Peak, this newly risen Nine Peaks, was the weakest amongst the Nine Peaks. However, they did have the one and only proud king from Nine Firmament's palace, Xiao Chun. There was a tangled expression on Su Ling's face. However, her eyes were filled with anticipation. As everyone was having their own thoughts, Mu Feng, the only one who had interacted with Xiao Chun before, suddenly shouted coldly, "Xiao Chun, you have a death wish. My cousin is here today. You dare appear here? Do you think you are a match for my cousin?" The hatred he felt for Xiao Chun did not diminish in the slightest. Relying on the fact that Mu He was standing beside him, Mu Feng shouted coldly, However, his words had only just left his mouth when Xiao Chen ignored him. Mu He, on the other hand, turned around and slapped Mu Feng across the face. At the same time, he shouted coldly, "Scram! You have no right to speak here. Scram!" Mu He didn't give Mu Feng any face at all. In Mu He's heart, although Xiao Chen was an enemy, Xiao Chen was worthy of respect because Xiao Chen was one of the 10 great geniuses just like him. As the Pride King, Mu He had his own pride. How could an ant like Mu Feng insult an opponent who was on par with him? After being berated by Mu He, Mu Feng did not dare to refute and retreated to the side as instructed. After which, Mu He turned his head to look at Xiao Chen and spoke in a very calm tone. "You did not disappoint me, demonic sword Xiao Chen." "Oh, if that's the case, then let my junior sisters go," Xiao Chen said with a smile. "Sure, as long as you fight with me. I'll let them go regardless of who wins or loses," Mu He said. Mu He didn't care about Su Ling and the others at all. Hearing that, the smile on Xiao Chen's face slowly vanished. The interspatial ring on his hand flashed, and the crimson edge sword appeared in his hand. A faintly discernible strand of sword qi emanated from Xiao Chen's body. This was an unavoidable battle, and Xiao Chen had no intention of avoiding it. On the contrary, Xiao Chen also wanted to fight Mu He. He used his actions to answer Mu He. Seeing this, Mu He also took out his earth weapon, a blood-red wooden stick. Mu He was skilled in stick techniques. The two of them took out their weapons at the same time and faced each other. The first battle of the Pride era was about to begin. Facing the upcoming battle, the Emperor of the Ocean Waves Empire, Lu Zhanhai, a Dao transformation expert, unconsciously swallowed a mouthful of saliva. His face was filled with nervousness. It could be seen that even a figure like him was looking forward to this battle and was nervous. Under everyone's gaze, Mu He was the first to move. He softly shouted Xiao Chen. His figure instantly turned into a streak of blood-red light and rapidly charged toward Xiao Chen. Like Xiao Chen, Mu He was also at the complete mysterious Yuan realm. However, just his speed alone wasn't inferior to an Earth Mirror cultivator. Facing Mu He's attack, Xiao Chen didn't retreat. Instead, he advanced and met Mu He's attack head-on. The long sword in his hand flicked out and viciously slashed at Mu He's blood-red stick. The battle between the two immediately erupted. Mu He's stick was like a tiger, while Xiao Chen's sword was like a dragon. A fierce battle between a dragon and a tiger erupted in the Emerald Waves Empire's Imperial Palace. As soon as the battle began, the two of them displayed astonishing battle prowess. Although they were only at the mysterious Ian realm, the power of each of their attacks was not weaker than that of a minor accomplishment Earth Mirror realm cultivator. The long sword and blood-red stick constantly clashed. White clothes and blood-red clothes crisscrossed. Xiao Chen and Mu He, who were in the midst of an intense battle, wore excited smiles on their faces. King of Geniuses. This was the highest evaluation given to the younger generation in the Heavenly Qin continent. Out of the numerous young geniuses in the Heavenly Qin continent, only 10 people were able to receive this honor. The 10 of them were indeed worthy of their titles as Lords of Pride. In just over a year, they had already left their peers far behind. Even the top geniuses were overshadowed by the 10 Lords of Pride. That was evident from the fact that Xiao Chen had taken on more than a dozen geniuses alone in the city of the King of Medicine and emerged victorious. Such powerful strength naturally caused the 10 great King of Geniuses to feel lonely. In their eyes, the challenges of their peers had already become dull and boring. On the path of cultivation, their peers couldn't pose the slightest threat to them. Being invincible was destined to be lonely. Perhaps it was because of this that Mu He was looking forward to his battle with Xiao Chen. Excitement surged in their hearts at the same time. Finally, they had met an opponent they could fight. Compared to those boring weaklings, the opponent before them was the one they had been searching for. Various expressions flashed across the faces of the two peerless geniuses, Mu Feng and Su Ling, as they watched the intense battle between the two. Shock, jealousy, envy, worship, and unwillingness. All these emotions unconsciously merged into a complicated expression on their faces. They were of the same age, had the same cultivation, and were both geniuses. However, compared to Xiao Chun and Mu He, the difference in strength between the two was too great. They weren't even on the same level. The two of them had no chance of winning against Xiao Chun and Mu He. As such, even though they were peerless geniuses, they could only serve as background characters in the generation of geniuses. This was because the brilliance of the 10 great king of geniuses was just too dazzling. It was so dazzling that it overshadowed all their peers, including those peerless geniuses. Is this the strength of a king of geniuses? This was the first time Su Ling had personally experienced the strength of a king of geniuses as she hung from the wooden frame. She couldn't help but softly murmur. She didn't pay attention to the changes in the crowd's expressions. Up until now, Xiao Chun and Mu He had been competing in terms of their foundations. They were competing in terms of their sword and staff techniques. Both of them could be said to have reached an unassailable level in terms of their foundations. They had not neglected their grasp of their foundations in their haste to break through. Please collect, recommend, reward. Chapter 159. As time went by, the battle grew increasingly intense. At the same time, more and more people gathered outside the imperial palace. Although most of them were unable to enter the imperial palace, that did not stop them from feeling excited. Judging by the terrifying shock waves from the battle, it was clear that the two kings' prides were locked in an intense battle. Although they were unable to personally witness the battle between the two kings' prides, they were unwilling to back down. They gathered outside the imperial palace, wanting to know the outcome of the battle as soon as possible. With so many spectators attracted, the battle between Xiao Chun and Mu He inadvertently spread throughout the entire central divine region. Thanks to the existence of voice transmission talismans, news of the battle spread quickly. It had only been 1 hour since the battle began, but the news of the prologue battle between the two kings' prides had spread to every corner of the central divine region. Every member of the younger generation from Nine Firmament's palace and the Mu family were filled with anticipation for the outcome of the battle. This was a battle between the two kings' prides. Whoever emerged victorious would undoubtedly be able to suppress the other party. In addition to Nine Firmament's palace and the Mu family, the other king's prides from the other overlord forces had also turned their attention to the Green Waves Empire. This was the prologue battle between the 10 great prides. It would truly be a battle that transcended eras. Gudu Wia, who was known as the Celestial Sword, was standing proudly on a mountain peak in Tianji Hall. Beside him, a beautiful young lady in a green dress was leaning against him. She knew what Gudu Wia was thinking when she saw the faint smile on his face. She smiled and said, "Don't worry." She smiled and asked, "Senior brother, are you thinking about the battle in the Green Waves Empire?" Something like that. Hearing the young woman's words, Gudu Wuya replied with a smile. "Then, who do you think will win?" "I don't know. Perhaps this battle will not end," Gudu Wuya replied. However, when she heard that, the young woman's smile grew even more brilliant. She knew that Gudu Wuya's fight had been completely ignited. Only other kings' prides could arouse the will to fight in her senior brother, who did not care about anything else. Just like Gudu Wuya, at this very moment, the various kings' prides in different parts of the central divine region received news of the battle between Xiao Chun and Mu He in the Green Waves Empire's imperial palace. In the Burning Sky sect, as the son of the Burning Sky ruler, Huangfu Ao, who was also known as the Burning Spear, stood proudly outside the main hall of the Burning Sky sect. His gaze looked in the direction of the Cerulean Waves Empire from afar, and his eyes burned with the flames of battle. It was obvious that he was extremely excited about the start of the battle royale, and was looking forward to a true head-on clash with the other kings. Aside from Gudu Wuya and Huangfu Ao, the rest of the kings of prides had similar reactions. They all knew that their time had come. After a year of silence, the light of the 10 kings of prides would illuminate the entire heavenly Chun continent. Demonic sword Xiao Chun, immortal sword Gudu Wuya, burning spear Huangfu Ao, snow fairy Ouyang Roshua, mythical fire phoenix Ling Yi, heavenly lightning Misty Ao, celestial sound Gu Mu, barbarian king Huanggu, divine fist Lin Nuo, bloodwood Mu He. The king's prides had finally arrived. The battle between Shao Chun and Mu He was the spark that ignited this era. After this battle, the flames of war between the king's prides were completely ignited. The king's prides competed with each other, improved with each other, and used their own methods to open a new era for the heavenly Qin continent. The prelude to a new era had begun, and the battle between Shao Chun and Mu He was still ongoing. The two of them had been fighting fiercely for 2 hours, and there was still no sign of a victor being decided. Their combat power was too close. Neither side was impatient as expected. On the contrary, the more they fought, the more excited they became. Their attacks also became fiercer. Eightfold blood kill. Mu He shouted coldly as he struck out with his staff. Staff shadows filled the sky. Each staff shadow carried a terrifying power. Facing Mu He's eightfold blood kill, Shao Chun pointed out with his finger. Chun Jun's sword finger. Facing the eightfold blood kill staff shadows, the Chun Jun sword finger's countless sword shadows shot out and fiercely collided with each other. Killing moves collided head-on. Neither side could do anything to the other. However, such collisions had happened countless times since the start of the battle. The powerful martial technique that could easily kill an Earth Mirror Realm martial artist was powerless in front of Shao Chun and Mu He. It was very difficult to pose any threat to them. Another head-on clash ensued. This time, Mu He did not hold back. His attack changed, and his aura abruptly soared. The bloody rod in his hand shone with a bloody light. Even before he attacked, he could already feel an aura that caused one's heart to palpitate, continuously spreading out. Mu He is about to use his killing move. Seeing Mu He's action, the Emperor of the Emerald Waves Empire, Lu Zhenhai, murmured softly. As a Dao Transformation Realm expert, he could naturally feel the power of Mu He's next move. Eightfold World Annihilation. With a furious roar, Mu He struck out with his staff. This time, there weren't any sword shadows that filled the sky like before. Instead, there was an explosion of bloodlight. There was only one staff shadow, but it carried an incomparable power and fiercely suppressed Shao Chun. The eightfold staff technique was the Mu clan's most precious treasure. In the entire younger generation of the Mu clan, only Mu He was qualified to cultivate it. Moreover, Mu He's eightfold staff technique was personally taught by the Mu clan's leader, Mu Tian. It was extremely powerful. Facing the terrifying blood staff that was descending from the sky, Shao Chun pointed his finger and directly used the dragon spring sword finger. The pure Jun sword finger was still able to resist the eightfold blood attack. However, against the eightfold world annihilation, he could only use the dragon spring sword finger. After the initial probing and the subsequent clash of various methods, the two of them had already used all their killing moves and trump cards. A dragon's roar resounded. A cyan dragon shadow broke through the sky from Shao Chun's finger and whistled as it charged towards Mu He's eightfold blood attack. Seeing that Shao Chun still had the strength to resist his eightfold blood attack, the excitement in Mu He's eyes became even more intense. No one of his generation had ever been able to withstand his attack. However, looking at Shao Chun's dragon spring sword finger, its power was actually not inferior to his eightfold blood attack in the slightest. Laughing maniacally, Mu He laughed heartily. Ha, refreshing. As Mu He laughed, the dragon shadow and staff shadow collided violently. A terrifying aftershock instantly swept through the entire main square. Feeling the terrifying aftershock sweeping through the area, the group of civil and military officials of the Emerald Waves Empire, led by Lu Zhenhai, exclaimed in shock, "Earth Mirror Realm, initial perfection." No, even an Earth Mirror Realm advanced perfection cultivator would find it difficult to escape unscathed if they were caught in it. The power of Shao Chun's attack was extremely shocking. Although Shao Chun's attack was far from being a threat to an expert of Lu Zhenhai's level, it should be known that Shao Chun's attack was only at the mysterious origin realm. Their attack was already not weaker than a Earth Mirror Realm Advanced Perfection cultivators. This was simply unheard of. Please collect, recommend, reward. Chapter 160. It was simply unheard of for someone at the grand completion mysterious Aeon realm to possess such terrifying strength. Even for someone at Lu Jinhai's level, it was hard to accept. He didn't dare to imagine what it would be like when the 10 kings broke through to the Tao transformation realm like him. He probably wouldn't even be able to take a single blow from them. Lu Jinhai originally thought that he had already overestimated the 10 Lords of Pride. However, after witnessing the battle between Xiao Chun and Mu He, he realized that he had still underestimated the 10 Lords of Pride. The only difference between the 10 kings and the older generation was the amount of time they had to cultivate. As long as they were given enough time, they would grow at an unstoppable speed. At that time, the entire Heavenly Chun continent would belong to them. No, perhaps the continent wouldn't be able to accommodate them by then. I wonder what the Heavenly Chun continent will look like in 100 years. Lu Jinhai sighed as he watched the two of them clash with their killing moves. If even Lu Jinhai had such thoughts, there was no need to mention the younger generation like Su Ling and Mu Feng. They were completely convinced by the strength of Xiao Chun and Mu He. At the same time, they deeply understood the gap between them and the 10 kings. Perhaps in the past, Mu Feng and Su Ling thought that the gap between them and the 10 kings wasn't that great. After all, they were all geniuses. Even if the 10 kings were strong, there would be a limit to how strong they could be. However, after personally experiencing the battle between the King of Geniuses, the two of them had completely shattered this notion. That's right, the top geniuses and the 10 kings were all geniuses in name. Even so, there was absolutely no comparison between the two. Judging from the combat prowess displayed by Xiao Chun and Mu He, any one of the top 10 proud sons of heaven could easily crush a peerless genius. As such, there was no need to even mention the top-notch geniuses. They had completely lost the confidence to compete with the 10 great prides. With such a huge gap, Su Ling and Mu Feng had already placed themselves in the right position. In this generation of geniuses, all the geniuses would be reduced to the background of the 10 great prides, or their followers. Only the 10 great prides had the qualifications to stand on the stage of the era of geniuses and lead the generation. They thought that they had understood the strength of the kings, but as the shockwaves from their previous attacks gradually dissipated, Xiao Chun and Mu He once again refreshed everyone's expectations of the king's strength. After the true clash, Xiao Chun and Mu He stopped their attacks at the same time. The two of them stood 10 meters apart. Their clothes were stained with dust and blood, but their eyes were as bright and determined as before. They stared at each other. Up until now, the two of them had already fully acknowledged each other's strength. This was a battle between the kings. It was extremely thrilling and thrilling. Xiao Chun, I'm really glad that I was born in this generation. If it weren't for all of you, how boring would I be? Dominating an entire generation is not what I want. Mu He sighed from the bottom of his heart as he looked at Xiao Chun. He was glad that he was born in this age of geniuses. Compared to dominating an entire generation, Mu He hoped that there would be someone who could compete with him for supremacy. He hoped to fight with him on the path of growth until he reached the end and peak of the martial way. Xiao Chun smiled faintly when he heard Mu He's words. He also had the same thoughts. Dominating alone was naturally far less interesting than competing with other geniuses. Only in troubled times could heroes be born. The two of them sighed with emotion. At the same time, it was no exaggeration to say that if they were not born in this generation, any one of the 10 kings would have become an existence that others of the same generation could not hope to reach if they were born in another generation. Just like Mu He had said, if they were born in another generation, how lonely and boring would it be for them, the 10 kings? Mu He smiled at each other before he opened his mouth again and said, Xiao Chun, come. I know that you haven't used your full strength to determine the final victor. Without waiting for Xiao Chun's reply, Mu He's skin began to slowly turn red as if it was being cooked. However, as his skin changed, Muhi's aura also began to rise steadily. From the perfect mysterious yuan stage, it quickly rose to the initial level of the Earth Mirror stage. Then it was the initial level of the Earth Mirror stage, the advanced level, the initial level, the perfect level. In the end, he actually broke through to the initial level of the heaven stage. It was obvious that Muhi had used a secret technique. This was also Muhi's last resort. His strength had increased tremendously, and the battle intent in Muhi's eyes had also become denser. With such a huge increase in strength and such a terrifying might, if it was an ordinary person, they would have been scared out of their wits by now. However, Xiao Qun was different. Muhi also believed that Xiao Qun definitely had his own trump card that he had not used yet. His aura had completely stabilized at the initial level of the heaven stage. Then Muhi softly shouted, "Secret technique, Bloodwood Ignition." Bloodwood Ignition was a treasure of the Mu clan that was as famous as the Eight Harmonies staff technique. It was also the only secret technique of the Mu clan. However, it was extremely difficult to master. It was said that the Bloodwood Ignition was obtained by the Mu clan's founder by chance, and the Mu clan had relied on this secret technique to rise to prominence. However, although the Bloodwood Ignition was powerful, it was extremely difficult to master. Since the establishment of the Mu clan until now, only 2 people had successfully mastered it. One was the Mu clan's founder, the person who led the Mu clan to glory. The other was the Mu clan's king of pride, Muhi, who carried the hopes of everyone in the Mu clan. He had the hope of bringing the Mu clan to new heights. His skin was blood red. At this moment, Muhi truly lived up to his name of Bloodwood. Sensing the terrifying aura coming from Muhi, Xiao Qun did not hesitate and directly used the beast transformation secret technique. After fusing with Long Qing's dragon clan's blood essence, the power of the beast transformation secret technique was completely released. Like Muhi, Xiao Qun's aura also increased rapidly with the help of the beast transformation secret technique. Soon, he reached the initial level of the heaven stage. There was a green dragon's shadow coiling around his body. Unlike Muhi's blood-red tyranny, Xiao Qun at this moment was majestic and domineering. He had used his trump card one after another. The 2 people who were at the peak of the mystic Aeon realm a second ago had actually transformed into heaven stage powerhouses. The crowd could no longer remain calm. They had thought that the terrifying battle just now was already the full strength of the 2. Who would have thought that the 2 still had such a terrifying trump card up their sleeves? The peak of the mystic Aeon realm can actually advance to the initial level of the heaven stage. This, even Lu Zhenhai found it hard to accept. As for Su Ling and Mu Feng, they were completely dumbfounded. This was the true difference between the 10 great kings of pride and the peerless geniuses like them. It was only at this moment that Mu Feng seemed to truly understand the true meaning of Muhi's words. Remember, when facing the king of pride, you will never be qualified to speak to him as an equal. If you see the other king of pride in the future, I advise you to stay away from them. The words that Muhi had once said to him kept echoing in Mu Feng's ears. Please add, recommend, reward. Chapter 161. The words that Muhi had said to him a few days ago kept echoing in his ears. Only now did Mu Feng understand the true meaning of those words. Thinking back to his previous understanding of the Kings of Pride, he was simply too naive. No wonder Muhi had warned him not to be rude to the Kings of Pride in the future, because any King of Pride had the ability to easily crush you. Heaven Tier. How is this possible? Possessing the battle prowess of the Heaven Tier at the age of 20. Not only Mu Feng, but all the civil and military officials of the Cerulean Waves Empire also exclaimed. Originally, they were already shocked by the battle prowess of Xiao Qun and Muhi, but now, the 2 of them had actually raised their battle prowess to the level of the Heaven Tier in an instant. In other words, didn't that mean that the 10 Kings of Pride now had the ability to contend with a Heaven Tier cultivator? Their cultivation was only at the consummate level of the mysterious Ian tier, but they already had the ability to contend with a heaven tier cultivator. The crowd no longer knew how to describe the shock in their hearts. Without a doubt, Xiao Chun and Mu He had once again refreshed the crowd's understanding of the two words kings of pride. Just as the crowd was shocked, Xiao Chun and Mu He began their final battle. Both of them had used their secret techniques, and their battle prowess was completely different from before. As the two of them battled, the terrifying aftershocks made some of the older generation heaven-tier cultivators present somewhat difficult to resist. Every aspect of the battle had been raised to the extreme by the two of them, and the sound of sonic booms constantly rang out. This was Xiao Chun and Mu He's battle at full strength. Neither of them held back in the slightest. In the face of a battle of this level, even if a true heaven-tier cultivator joined in, he would probably not be able to last for too long. The crowd was completely stunned as they stared blankly at the two of them engaged in battle. After an unknown amount of time, when the two of them clashed for the last time, whether it was Xiao Chun or Mu He, both of them retreated at the same time and took the initiative to dispel their secret techniques. Using secret techniques had side effects, and after the fierce battle just now, both of them understood that the other's secret technique was very strong, and it would be very difficult to defeat it. So, before the side effects arrived, both of them had simultaneously dispelled their secret techniques. It was difficult to determine the victor in a short period of time, and the battle had already lasted until now. If it continued, both of them would suffer. They took the initiative to stop, but at this moment, Xiao Chun and Mu He were both somewhat pale. They took the initiative to put away their scarlet-edged swords and looked at Mu He. Xiao Chun smiled faintly and said, "Can I take them away now?" Hearing Xiao Chen's words, Xiao Chun Mu He. "But before you leave, are you interested in drinking?" What was hard to imagine was that after the previous intense battle, the two of them actually did not hold any grudges against each other. On the contrary, it was as if they had become friends after fighting and had become friends. Mu He invited Xiao Chun to drink, and Xiao Chun did not refuse. As for Su Ling and the others, they would naturally be taken care of by the people of the Ocean Waves Empire. Xiao Chun had a good impression of Mu He compared to the people of the Mu family whom he had met before, after successfully resolving the matter of the Ocean Waves Empire. Although Mu He was arrogant, he was straightforward and upright. Such a person was indeed worth befriending. In addition, Mu He's strength had already received Xiao Chen's acknowledgement. As a dragon amongst men, it was naturally very easy for them to become friends. At Xiao Chen's level, there were far too few people of the same age who could catch their eye. After getting the people from the Ocean Wave Empire to put Su Ling and the others down and arrange a place for them to rest, Xiao Chun and Mu He prepared to drink. However, Mu Feng and Su Ling insisted on following them no matter what. Xiao Chun did not object, and Mu He did not object. Just like that, the four of them arrived at the residence that the imperial family of the Ocean Wave Empire had prepared for Mu He. After the four of them left, Lu Zhenhai and Lu Yu stood side by side in the main plaza. Looking at his son, Lu Zhenhai earnestly said, "You, remember, our Ocean Wave Empire must never make an enemy of the King Geniuses." After personally witnessing this epic-making battle between the King Geniuses, Lu Zhenhai understood that no matter what happened to the Ocean Wave Empire in the future, they must never make an enemy of any of the King Geniuses. Otherwise, the Ocean Wave Empire would be doomed. Hearing his father's words, Lu Yu earnestly nodded his head. He was no fool and naturally understood the reasoning behind it. The current 10 King Geniuses were only at the perfect mysterious Yuan stage, but their true battle strength had already reached the heaven stage. Although they had only achieved this through the use of a secret technique and could not last very long, it was already terrifying enough. Apart from the 10 King Geniuses, who else in the entire heavenly Chun continent could achieve this? Moreover, if the 10 King Geniuses were allowed to break through to the heaven stage, then, after using the secret technique, what level would their battle strength reach? At the very least, it should not be lower than the Tao querying stage. However, Given the cultivation speed of the 10 king geniuses, it should not take them too long to reach the heaven stage. According to Lu Yu's guess, it would take at most 5 years for all of the 10 king geniuses to step into the heaven stage. 5 years to break through from the perfect, mysterious yuan stage to the heaven stage. If it were anyone else, it would be impossible. However, the 10 king geniuses were different. Their appearance meant that it was impossible. The father and son set the national policy of the Ocean Wave Empire to never offend any of the king geniuses. After saying that, Lu Zhenhai personally instructed Lu Yu to take good care of the 9 Firmaments Palace's disciples, to invite the best imperial physicians, and use the best medicinal pills to treat their injuries. After receiving his father's orders, Lu Yu respectfully acknowledged and quickly left. The first battle of the King of Geniuses contest had ended. Although there was no conclusion, there was one thing that caused everyone to be incomparably shocked. Furthermore, it was spreading rapidly throughout the entire divine central region. Xiao Chun and Mu He. Although the two of them were only at the perfect, mysterious yuan stage, they possessed the battle strength of the heaven stage. After this news spread like wildfire, the fear of the 10 king geniuses rose to a whole new level. Moreover, many of the almighty figures of the older generation speculated that if Xiao Chun and Mu He could do this, then the other 10 king geniuses would most likely be able to do the same. Although they were only at the perfect, mysterious yuan stage, they already possessed the battle strength of the heaven stage. In an instant, following the conclusion of the King of Geniuses contest, the reputation of the 10 king geniuses soared. Some of the peerless geniuses who had once thought of competing with the 10 king geniuses had already lost all such thoughts. What a joke! Competing with the 10 king geniuses was simply courting death. If the king geniuses did not appear, the king geniuses would run amok. If the king geniuses appeared, the king geniuses would bow their heads. This was the current situation of the younger generation of the heavenly Chun continent. If the 10 king geniuses did not appear, then the other geniuses could do as they pleased. However, once a king geniuses appeared, then regardless of whether you were a top-notch genius or a peerless genius, you could only bow your head and bow your head. Please collect, recommend, reward. Chapter 162. The outside world was in an uproar because of the battle between Xiao Chun and Mu He. However, Xiao Chun and Mu He did not pay too much attention to this matter. At this moment, the two of them were drinking to their heart's content in the imperial palace of the Ocean Waves Empire. Mu He did not feel any reluctance at all when he took out the good wine that the ancestor of the Mu family had collected for many years. In Mu He's opinion, only someone like Xiao Chun was worthy of such good wine. Xiao Chun and Mu He sat opposite each other in the garden. As for Mu Feng and Su Ling, the two of them sat behind them. Unlike Mu Feng, this was the first time Su Ling had come into contact with Xiao Chun. At this moment, she sat to the right of Xiao Chun, slightly behind him. Her beautiful eyes unconsciously studied Xiao Chun. Unknowingly, Su Ling had become uncontrollably attracted to Xiao Chun. It was not only because of Xiao Chen's strength, nor was it because of Xiao Chen's title as the Proud King. In any case, Su Ling was unable to describe this feeling. She only knew that Xiao Chun possessed an indescribable attractiveness. Su Ling constantly fell deeper and deeper into his grasp with every movement he made. He did not notice the change in Su Ling. At this very moment, Xiao Chen's attention was completely focused on Mu He. The two of them chatted casually, and from time to time, they would even laugh boldly. They didn't discuss any important matters of the country, nor did they talk about how they wanted to dominate the world. However, from their simple conversation, anyone could hear the heroic spirit in their hearts. Brother Xiao Chun, come. My idiot cousin offended you last time. Today, I'll apologize on his behalf. After chatting for a while, Mu He took the initiative to apologize to Xiao Chun for Mu Feng's actions in the city of the Medicine King. Xiao Chun smiled faintly when he heard Mu He's words. He glanced at Mu Feng indifferently. Sensing Xiao Chen's gaze, Mu Feng subconsciously lowered his head. Afterwards, Xiaochen also smiled as he replied, "It's no problem. Brother Mu He, there's no need to take it to heart." Naturally, they would not take it to heart. Hearing that, the two of them looked at each other and smiled. Then, they finished the wine in their cups in one gulp. They continued drinking until late at night. Only then did the two of them leave. After resting for one night in the Green Waves Empire, Xiao Chun prepared to bring Su Ling and the others back to Nine Firmaments Palace. As for Mu He was also preparing to return to the Mu family. Of course, the matter of Mu Feng marrying Lu Yu's younger sister naturally came to an end because Mu Feng had clearly indicated that he was too reckless earlier. And, of course, when the time comes, I will definitely welcome you. Mui laughed heartily, bringing Mu Feng with him. He leapt onto the Mu family's flying Yao beast. Immediately, they soared into the sky, disappearing into the horizon. Seeing Mu He disappear into the horizon, Xiao Qin too leapt onto the golden-winged great Peng Eagle. He cupped his fists towards Lu Zhanhai and the others from the Ocean Waves Empire, who had come to send them off. Then he too soared into the sky, disappearing from everyone's sight. After safely bringing Su Ling and the other disciples from Holy Maiden Peak back to Nine Firmaments Palace, Xiao Chun arrived at Heavenly Sword Peak. Song Xian, Song Yun, Song Long, and Su Zhen were already waiting for him in the Grand Hall. Xiao Chun gave the four of them a brief account of what happened. The four of them praised him for his performance. At the same time, after this battle, Heavenly Sword Peak's status among the 9 peaks of Nine Firmaments Palace rose greatly. That was especially true of Xiao Chun. By then, Xiao Chun had become the idol of most of the disciples of Nine Firmaments Palace. That was because Xiao Chun was the only king of prides in Nine Firmaments Palace. After realizing just how terrifying a king of prides was, the geniuses who considered themselves superior no longer dared to casually provoke Xiao Chun. By now, everyone in the Heavenly Chun continent knew that compared to a king of prides, the geniuses were simply too weak. There was simply no comparison. Xiao Chun did not mind the change in attitude of the disciples of Nine Firmaments Palace. After bidding farewell to Song Xian and the others, Xiao Chun made a beeline for the Immaculate Residence. After being away for a few days, Qin Shuru must have been worried sick. In the Immaculate Residence, Xiao Chun explained everything to Qin Shuru in detail. After confirming that Xiao Chun was fine, Qin Shuru breathed a sigh of relief. At the same time, Qin Shuru felt very proud of the Battle of the Kings of Prides. Her husband was also one of the 10 Kings of Prides, one of the main characters of this era. It was a rare day of relaxation. When night fell, Xiao Chun and Qin Shuru could not help but enjoy the spring breeze. As the time spent with Qin Shuru grew longer, the two of them grew closer and closer. Xiao Chun found that he was becoming more and more infatuated with Qin Shuru. She was a woman of great charm. As time passed, Qin Shuru seemed to be constantly growing more beautiful. In the beginning, she could only be considered an ordinary beauty. But now, in the entire Heavenly Chun continent, there were very few women who could compete with Qin Shuru in terms of beauty. Additionally, Xiao Chun also found out from Qin Shuru that some bored fellows from Nine Firmaments Palace had ranked the 4 great beauties. Qin Shuru was ranked first, hailed as the #1 beauty in Nine Firmaments Palace. And yet, no one objected to it. It was clear that Qin Shuru's beauty had gained the recognition of everyone in Nine Firmaments Palace. Naturally, Xiao Chun had no interest in the 4 great beauties. Who cares if she was the leader of the 4 great beauties? At any rate, no matter how beautiful Qin Shuru was, she was still his woman. Only he could enjoy Qin Shuru's countless charms. Back in Nine Firmaments Palace, Xiao Chun's days returned to a state of tranquility. Every day, he would immerse himself in his cultivation routine. From time to time, he would have sex with Qin Shuru. His days were spent in an incomparably comfortable manner. As Xiao Chen's side was in a state of tranquility, the outside world was not. After the battle between Xiao Chun and Mu He, the 10 Great Prides took action one after another. For battles between the 10 Great Prides broke out in a row. The 4 battles between the 10 Great Prides allowed the 10 Great Prides to prove their strength to the world. Every one of them possessed the combat power of a sky human stage cultivator. Immortal Sword Guduya fought against Burning Spear Huangfu Ao. Fire Phoenix Ling Yi fought against Snow Fairy Ouyang Roshue. Thunder Mist Xie Ao fought against Celestial Melody Gumu. Barbarian King Primordial fought against Divine Fist Lin Nuo. The successive battles between the 10 Great Prides raised the status of the 10 Great Prides to a new pinnacle. In fact, there were even some who suggested that the 10 Great Prides be separated from the ranks of Heaven's Prides. The strength of the 10 Great Prides was already enough to crush the other Heaven's Prides. They should no longer be called Heaven's Prides. Otherwise, it would be an insult to the 10 Great Prides. Begging to be collected, begging to be recommended, begging to be rewarded. Chapter 163. The world once again proposed the idea of separating the 10 great prodigies from the Heaven's Prides. They wanted the 10 great prodigies to be existences above the Heaven's Prides. However, the sovereigns did not express any opinion on this proposal. Without the approval of the sovereigns, this was clearly just a fantasy. For example, the titles of Xiao Chun and the others were all approved by the sovereigns. On the heavenly Chun continent, only the sovereign's approval could be considered an official matter. Otherwise, it would not be accepted. The sovereigns did not seem to have any intention of separating the 10 great prodigies, and the 10 great prodigies did not care about this either. To them, these things were all empty and did not have any substantial use. In their eyes, all they wanted was to improve their own strength, reach the peak of the martial way, and compete with each other. All the turmoil in the outside world seemed to have nothing to do with them. After a short period of intense battle, the 10 great prodigies seemed to have returned to silence. Half a month passed, and there was no news of them at all. From the start of the chaotic battle between Xiao Chun and Mu He to the 10 great prodigies, the 10 great prodigies all fell silent once again after such a fast-paced battle. Of course, quite a few people guessed that the 10 great prodigies had fallen silent because they were preparing to break through to the Earth Mirror Realm. This was because the 10 great prodigies had all reached the perfect mysterious Yuan stage. The next step was to break through to the Earth Mirror Realm. As a result, the 10 great prodigies all chose to go into seclusion after the battle and ignore the outside world. Breaking through from mysterious Yuan stage to the Earth Mirror Realm was different from breaking through to the Earth Mirror Realm. This was the beginning of the process of the spiritual sense. In other words, the spiritual sense was the predecessor of the spiritual sense. Once the spiritual sense evolved, it would become the spiritual sense. Unlocking the spiritual sense was an extremely important matter for any cultivator. It was no exaggeration to say that the strength of the spiritual sense represented one's future achievements. If the spiritual sense was too weak, it would be unable to evolve into the spiritual sense. Without the spiritual sense, one's achievements in life would be limited. This was a cause and effect relationship. Due to the importance of spiritual sense, none of the 10 great geniuses, including Xiao Chun, dared to lower their guard at all. All of them were fully prepared for the upcoming breakthrough. At the same time, the almighties and rulers behind them spared no effort in providing the greatest amount of support for these geniuses. Take Xiao Chun, for example. After knowing that he was about to break through to the Earth Clear Realm, Tao Master Danyan personally refined an extreme spirit pill for him. Although the extreme spirit pill was only an Earth-grade pill, it wasn't too troublesome to refine. However, the herbs needed to refine it were extremely rare. Therefore, the price of the extreme spirit pill was much more expensive than most heaven-grade pills. If one had an extreme spirit pill when breaking through to the Earth Clear Realm, it would definitely be of great help in opening one's spiritual sense. At the very least, it would increase the chances of success by more than 50%. Don't forget that the extreme spirit pill had been refined by Tao Master Danyan himself. As a hidden ruler, the extreme spirit pill refined by Tao Master Danyan had golden veins. It was even more extraordinary. Thinking about it, there were only a few people in the entire Tianshan continent who could make Dao Yun personally refine pills. It could be said that for Xiao Qin's breakthrough, Dao Yun had already done his best. Apart from the extreme spirit pill refined by Tao Master Danyan himself, the ruler of the continent of the Nine Clouds also summoned Xiao Chun. It was the first time since Xiao Chun had come to the Nine Clouds Palace that the ruler of the continent of the Nine Clouds had summoned him. Song Xian brought Xiao Chun to the ruler of the continent of the Nine Clouds residence. At the top of the mountain, Xiao Chun saw the ruler of the continent of the Nine Clouds. When the ruler of the continent of the Nine Clouds saw Xiao Chun, he motioned for Song Xian to leave. Then he asked Xiao Chun to sit down in front of him and smiled. I heard that Tao Master Danyan refined an extreme spirit pill for you to help you break through to the Earth Clear realm, right? Yes. When Xiao Chun heard the ruler of the continent of the Nine Clouds, he nodded. It wasn't a secret. Besides, everybody in Celestial Sword Peak knew about it already. Many disciples that were jealous of him. When Xiao Chun nodded, the ruler of the continent of the Nine Clouds smiled. Since it's that way, I don't need to give you any pills. But I can let you go to the tomb of the Nine Clouds to break through. You can use the extreme spirit pill to its fullest there. Since Tao Master Danyan had already given Xiao Chun an extreme spirit pill, the ruler of the continent of the Nine Clouds didn't need to do anything more. But even if he didn't give Xiao Chun pills, he could still give Xiao Chun other things. For example, he could let Xiao Chun go to the tomb of the Nine Clouds. He had never heard of the tomb of the Nine Clouds, but if some elders had been there, they would have been jealous because the tomb of the Nine Clouds Palace was one of the 3 holy cultivation places of Nine Clouds Palace. Normally, even if you had the points of Nine Clouds Palace, you couldn't go there. Only those who had made great contributions to Nine Clouds Palace and the ruler of the continent of the Nine Clouds allowed them to go there. Everyone knew that the 9 peaks of Nine Firmaments Palace had some cultivation holy lands. Those cultivation holy lands were controlled by the peak lords. Basically, the peak lords could decide who could enter those holy lands. There was no need to report it to the ruler of the continent of the Nine Firmaments. But holy cultivation places like the tomb of the Nine Clouds didn't belong to the 9 peaks. They were directly controlled by the ruler of the continent of the Nine Clouds. Even the peak leaders couldn't go there whenever they wanted. Only those who had the approval of the ruler of the continent of the Nine Clouds could go there to practice cultivation. Due to that, all the disciples and even the elders of Nine Firmaments Palace found it very difficult to enter the 3 great holy lands for cultivation. Due to that, the 3 great holy lands were considered by many to be places of dreams. And now, because Xiao Chun wanted to break through to the Earth Clarity layer, the ruler of the continent of the Nine Clouds had made an exception and opened one of the holy cultivation places, the tomb of the Nine Clouds. There was no time limit. Before Xiao Chun broke through to the Earth Clarity layer, he could practice cultivation there. When Xiao Chun heard the ruler of the continent of the Nine Clouds, he didn't pretend to be polite. He thanked the ruler of the continent of the Nine Clouds. The path of cultivation was not based on politeness. The ruler of the continent of the Nine Clouds had opened the tomb of the divine thunder for him. The other kings of geniuses would definitely have the support of the strong cultivators behind them, and the help they would receive would not be any less than Xiao Chen's. Therefore, if Xiao Chun missed this opportunity because of hypocrisy and politeness, his cultivation would be left behind by the other kings of geniuses. That would be a foolish thing to do. When the ruler of the continent of the Nine Clouds saw that Xiao Chun had agreed, he smiled. Come and find me tomorrow. I'll take you to the tomb of the Nine Clouds. Remember, don't take the Supreme Spirit pill yet. Take it after you enter the tomb of the Nine Clouds. It'll be even more effective that way. Please add it to your collection, recommend it, reward it. Chapter 164. After saying goodbye to the ruler of the continent of the Nine Clouds, Xiao Chen went back to the dustless residence and told Qin Shiru that he was going to the tomb of the Nine Clouds the next day. Qin Shiru didn't say much about that. He knew that it was important for Xiao Chen to break through to the Earth realm. Qin Shiru just told Xiao Chen to be careful. He gave some cultivation resources to Qin Shiru, Qin Yao, and Qin Luo. These days, Qin Shiru was also close to breaking through to the top of the Xianian layer. After Xiao Chen broke through to the Earth realm, Qin Shiru would also break through to the top of the Xianian layer. Xiao Chen hadn't expected such a fast cultivation speed. The next day, early in the morning, Xiao Chen went to the ruler of the continent of the Nine Clouds. The ruler of the continent of the Nine Clouds had been waiting for him for a long time. When he saw Xiao Chen, he didn't waste any time. He took Xiao Chen to the depths of the continent of the Nine Clouds Godly Mountain. The biggest mountains of the continent of the Nine Clouds Godly Mountain were the 9 peaks of the Nine Clouds Palace. Apart from the 9 godly mountains, there were many other inconspicuous mountains surrounding them. The tomb of the Nine Clouds Godly Lightning was located at the top of an unknown mountain in the depths of the continent of the Nine Clouds Godly Mountain. The entire mountain was surrounded by a gigantic layer of deployment spells. The ruler of the continent of the Nine Clouds had personally made those deployment spells. Unless the ruler personally made a move, even Dao Venerables couldn't break those deployment spells. The ruler of the continent of the Nine Clouds led the 2 of them to the mountain very quickly. From a distance, the mountain was black, as if it had been burnt. At the top of the mountain, there were thick thunderclouds all year round. Lightning kept falling from the sky. That was where the divine thunder tomb of Jiuxiao was located. Instead of taking Xiao Chen to the top of the mountain, Xiao Chen was placed at the foot of the mountain. With Xiao Chen's current level of training, there was no way he could withstand the heavenly thunder at the top of the mountain. Only at the foot of the mountain, after experiencing the power of the heavenly thunder filtered by the entire mountain, would Xiao Chen be able to withstand it. Remember, don't rush. The lightning in the tomb of the Nine Clouds Godly Lightning is extremely powerful, especially at the top of the mountain. Only Dao Venerables can withstand it, so don't rashly climb the mountain, reminded the ruler of the Nine Clouds Godly Lightning. When the ruler of the Nine Clouds warned him, Xiao Chen naturally wouldn't risk his life. He nodded solemnly. When the ruler of the Nine Clouds saw that, he didn't say much. He just told Xiao Chen that if he broke through to the earth-clear layer, he could leave. After the ruler of the Nine Clouds left, Xiao Chen turned around and looked at the mountain, which wasn't very tall. He walked into the deployment spells. Because the ruler of the Nine Clouds had approved of him, the deployment spells around the tomb of the Nine Clouds didn't stop Xiao Chen. Xiao Chen easily entered the tomb of the Nine Clouds Godly Lightning. Xiao Chen was only at the foot of the mountain. He had not even reached the foot of the mountain yet. However, a bolt of heavenly lightning fell from the sky as soon as Xiao Chen entered. The tiny bolt of lightning sank into Xiao Chen's head in an instant. Xiao Chen felt as if his soul was trembling all of a sudden. The heavenly thunder of the 9th Heaven Divine Thunder Tomb would not cause any harm to the physical body. It only worked on the soul. Because of this, the 9th Heaven Divine Thunder Tomb was extremely helpful in breaking through the earth mirror, because the spiritual sense formed under the constant tempering of the heavenly thunder was much stronger than the spiritual sense formed under normal circumstances. It was the first time he had experienced the power of the tomb of the Nine Clouds Godly Lightning. After his soul trembled, Xiao Chen faintly sensed that his soul strength was purer than before. It was just one bolt of lightning, and it made him feel that way. He smiled thinly and walked to the foot of the mountain. Without hesitation, Xiao Chen sat down cross-legged and started to receive the baptism of the Nine Clouds Godly Lightning. At the same time, he started to break through to the earth-clear layer. Xiao Chen didn't rush for quick success and instant benefits. He planned to use the tomb of the Nine Clouds Godly Lightning to temper his soul strength before breaking through to the earth-clear layer and opening his spiritual awareness. Only after thoroughly tempering one's spiritual strength could one truly open a perfect spiritual sense. This would bring great benefits to one's cultivation in the future. He didn't take any supreme spirit pills, nor did he rush to break through to the earth-clear layer. He just endured the baptism of the godly lightning. After being filtered by the entire mountain, the power of the heavenly thunder at the foot of the mountain was, as the ruler of the continent of the 9 clouds had said, within Xiao Qian's tolerance range. Even though Xiao Qian's soul would tremble every time the godly lightning struck him, he could bear it completely. With the godly lightning's continuous tempering, his soul was becoming purer and purer. In the empty tomb of the 9 clouds' godly lightning, Xiao Qian was like an old monk meditating. His eyes were tightly closed, and he silently endured the godly lightning. 5 days passed, and Xiao Qian didn't move at all. At the same time, after 5 days of baptism of the godly lightning, his clothes were in tatters. Many parts of his body were burnt. 5 days, 6 days, 7 days. 10 days after entering the tomb of the 9 clouds' godly lightning, Xiao Qian's soul strength had reached its limit. It didn't mean that there was no room for improvement, but that the godly lightning at the foot of the mountain couldn't help his soul anymore. If he wanted to improve, he had to climb the mountain and go to a higher place to receive the baptism of the godly lightning. But that was too dangerous. With his current cultivation level, it was difficult for him to withstand the godly lightning. He couldn't rashly climb the mountain. His soul strength had already reached Xiao Qian's expectations. Therefore, Xiao Qian started to break through to the earth-clear layer. He took out the supreme spirit pills Master Dan Yun had concocted for him and swallowed them. Then he closed his eyes and sat down cross-legged. He started to break through to the earth-clear layer. The difficulty of breaking through a big realm was naturally far greater than that of breaking through a small realm. Therefore, even if he was fully prepared, it wasn't easy to break through to the earth-clear layer. Fortunately, Xiao Qian was already prepared. He wasn't in a hurry. He mobilized his spiritual power over and over again to break through to the earth-clear layer. He didn't know how many times he had tried to break through to the earth-clear layer. Anyway, in the end, Xiao Qian was almost numb to it. He instinctively kept breaking through to the earth-clear layer. Finally, after 5 days and countless attempts, the sound of glass breaking came from Xiao Qian's body. At the same time, a crack finally appeared on the originally indestructible earth-clear layer. With the appearance of the first crack, the barrier was no longer stable, and the following matters became much easier. The number of cracks gradually increased, and in the end, it took Xiao Qian another 3 days to completely break through the barrier of the earth mirror. As the barrier was broken through, Xiao Qian did not stop. He swallowed a large number of pills in one go, and pure and vast amounts of spiritual power instantly spread throughout his body, rushing madly to his dantian through his limbs and meridians. His dantian, which had been extremely dry due to the recent breakthrough, was now frantically absorbing the spiritual power, as if it had been sweet dew after a long drought. Please collect, recommend, reward. Chapter 165. After half a month, he finally broke through to the earth mirror. After the breakthrough, Xiao Qian also felt that the spiritual awareness between his eyebrows had finally started to take shape. When a cultivator reached the earth mirror, they would be able to activate their spiritual awareness. Spiritual awareness had a wide range of uses. Not only could it be used to sense things, it could also greatly increase a cultivator's combat strength. Think about it. Without spiritual awareness, one could only use one's eyes to judge when fighting. With spiritual awareness, one could use it to predict the enemy's next move. As a result, one's combat strength would naturally be greatly enhanced. It was also because of the emergence of spiritual awareness that there was an insurmountable gap between the mysterious Aeon realm and the Earth mirror. In the entire heavenly Qin continent, only the 10 prides could cross this gap. When they were at the mysterious Aeon realm, they could ignore spiritual awareness and kill Earth Mirror cultivators who were at the mysterious Aeon realm. Feeling the spiritual awareness that was constantly awakening, even with Xiao Chen's temperament, he couldn't help but feel excited. This feeling was similar to when he broke through to the mysterious Aeon realm and achieved the mysterious spirit martial body. Spiritual awareness constantly gathered between his eyebrows. However, when the spiritual stone was completely formed, something strange happened. Xiao Chen's Heavenly Way sword embryo actually emitted a bright golden light, instantly enveloping the newly formed spiritual awareness. There was no way to stop the Heavenly Way sword embryo's movements. Feeling this strange change, Xiao Chen's face darkened. He didn't know what was going on. Originally, after experiencing the baptism of countless heavenly lightning, his spiritual awareness could be said to have reached the perfect level. But now, because of the strange change of the Heavenly Way sword embryo, his spiritual awareness seemed to be affected. The condensation that should have ended was actually starting to change again. From a light ball the size of a thumb, for limbs gradually grew. In between his eyebrows, his spiritual awareness actually turned into a small golden person. And this wasn't the end. Just after his spiritual awareness transformed into a small golden person, the Heavenly Way sword embryo actually took the initiative to come above him and slowly rotated. Moreover, faint golden light constantly spread down, as if it was using the golden light to nourish his spiritual awareness. The Heavenly Way sword embryo was nourishing his spiritual awareness? His face revealed a look of disbelief. He never knew that the Heavenly Path sword embryo had the ability to nourish the spiritual sense. Furthermore, in just a few breaths of time, Xiao Chen could clearly feel that his spiritual sense had been imbued with a trace of the sword chi from the Heavenly Path sword embryo. Spiritual sense actually contained sword chi. This was simply too exaggerated. One had to know that spiritual sense was the predecessor of spiritual sense, and spiritual sense and physical body made up a person's everything. It was normal for the physical body to have sword chi. Almost every sword cultivator could do it. However, it was too exaggerated for spiritual sense and spiritual sense to also have sword chi. It was hard to imagine that under the nourishment of the Heavenly Way sword embryo, when his spiritual sense transformed into spiritual sense, both his physical body and spiritual sense would carry sword chi. Wouldn't that mean that he would be the most perfect sword cultivator, be it his physical body or soul? This sudden turn of events left Xiao Chen in a daze for a moment. This was also the terrifying aspect of the heavenly sword embryo. At the same time, this special physique that was only limited to legends seemed to be gradually revealing its brilliance at this moment. Not to mention other things, just the nourishment of spiritual sense was enough to make countless sword cultivators go crazy. Looking inwardly at the space between his eyebrows, he could see a small golden person sitting cross-legged in the middle of his eyebrows. Above his head, a simple and unadorned small sword floated in the air. Under the illumination of the golden light, the small golden person gave off an extremely extraordinary feeling. It was no exaggeration to say that Xiao Chen's spiritual sense was probably unique. In the entire heavenly Chun continent, there was no one with a spiritual sense like Xiao Chen's. At the same time, Xiao Chen didn't even need to deliberately cultivate his spiritual sense. Under the nourishment of the Heavenly Way sword embryo, his spiritual sense would constantly grow stronger. At the same time, it would become the most compatible spiritual sense for sword cultivators and even the spiritual sense in the future. After carefully sensing his spiritual sense, Xiao Chen finally stood up and pointed with his finger. He directly used the Chun Jun sword finger. He saw that what should have been a sword light had now turned golden. Moreover, its power had also increased tremendously. Compared to before, it had increased by at least 30%. His sword chi had become stronger and even faintly touched the threshold of sword intent. This was probably the benefit of the Heavenly Way sword embryo and spiritual sense. He was overjoyed. Of course, Xiao Chen wasn't happy about the small improvement in front of him. but the long-term improvement. With the Heavenly Way sword embryo, his spiritual sense could definitely transform into an existence that countless sword cultivators would envy. It was also because Xiao Chan was born in the Heavenly Qin continent that he didn't know much about the Heavenly Way sword embryo. In a higher dimension world, there were more detailed records of the Heavenly Way sword embryo. And Xiao Qin's current situation was the process of forming a sword spirit. A sword spirit was a spirit that was born for the top sword cultivators. Any sword cultivator who had a sword spirit would, without exception, become a sword Dao grandmaster in the future. However, there was only one way to form a sword spirit, and that was the Heavenly Way sword embryo. Only the Heavenly Way sword embryo could help the spiritual sense transform into a sword spirit. Therefore, in a higher dimension world, the Heavenly Way sword embryo was known as the top special constitution for sword cultivators. He didn't know about this, but it didn't matter. After calming down the excitement in his heart, he was not in a hurry to leave the Nine Heavens divine thunder tomb. Having just broken through the earth mirror and formed a spiritual sense, Xiao Chan planned to stay here for a few more days. It would be best if he could completely stabilize the cultivation that he had just broken through. The heavenly thunder at the foot of the mountain had no effect on him. Glancing at the peak of the mountain, which was not too high, Xiao Chan began to climb up. Of course, Xiao Chen's goal was not the peak of the mountain. He just wanted to move forward slightly and reach the limit that he could bear. This way, the effect would be the best. Starting from the foot of the mountain, Xiao Chan only moved forward more than 10 meters, and he felt great pressure. The heavenly thunder here was at least twice as strong as at the foot of the mountain, and this was already the limit that Xiao Chan could bear. Instead of climbing rashly, Xiao Chan found an open space and sat down cross-legged again to accept the baptism of the heavenly thunder. Moreover, he swallowed a lot of elixirs to stabilize the realm that he had just broken through. His aura was still a little unstable, but with the help of the heavenly thunder and the elixirs, his aura, which was still a little unstable because of the breakthrough, was constantly stabilizing and solidifying. This was also a manifestation of the continuous stabilization of the cultivation realm. A lofty building starts from the ground. Every breakthrough of the realm must have a solid foundation. One must not neglect the importance of the foundation for temporary success. Otherwise, if the foundation of a certain realm was not stable, it would be too late to regret the impact on the future. Xiao Chan was very clear about this. Please collect, recommend, reward. Chapter 166. Xiao Chen closed his eyes and sat cross-legged in the ninth heaven divine lightning tomb. After 3 days, he finally stabilized his cultivation at the initial level of the earth mirror. It was unlikely for him to make a breakthrough in the near future, so Xiao Chan didn't waste any more time and chose to leave the ninth heaven divine lightning tomb. On the way there, the ruler of the continent of the nine clouds had told him that he could leave if he wanted to break through. After leaving the godly lightning tomb, Xiao Chan went to the ruler of the continent of the nine clouds' residence. He wanted to thank him in person, but unfortunately, the ruler of the continent of the nine clouds wasn't there. Xiao Chan had no choice but to go back to the celestial sword peak. After returning to the sky sword peak, Xiao Chan told Song Xian and Dao Master Danyun about his breakthrough to the earth-clear mirror realm. The two were naturally overjoyed. After chatting with them for a while, Xiao Chan returned to the dustless residence. It had been almost a month since Xiao Chan returned to the dustless residence. At this moment, Qin Shi had also successfully broken through to the perfect arcane Ian stage. Xiao Chan was naturally overjoyed that both of them had broken through at the same time. That night, he invited Qin Heng, Qi Yin, Imo Jia, and a few other friends to the dustless residence for a hearty drink. At night, in the Wuchen residence, everyone sat together and happily drank wine. Seeing that Xiao Chan had broken through to the initial level of the earth mirror, Imo Jia only felt envious and happy. There wasn't the slightest bit of jealousy. He had been good friend with Xiao Chun since the East Sword Pavilion. Although Mo Jie's cultivation was only at the perfect mysterious yuan stage, and the gap between him and Xiao Chun had completely widened, he knew that his talent couldn't be compared to Xiao Chen's. Mo Jie sincerely hoped that Xiao Chun could soar into the sky in the future. They were all good friends who could talk about anything. They drank until late at night. Qin Heng and the others said their goodbyes and left one after another. Xiao Chun also fell asleep under the care of Qin Shiru. Less than 3 days after Xiao Chun successfully broke through to the Earth Mirror, the other kings of geniuses also successfully came out of seclusion. They had all reached the Earth Mirror. The success of the kings of geniuses' breakthroughs naturally couldn't be hidden from the world. Moreover, after the kings of geniuses all broke through, Huangfu Ao from the Burning Sky sect announced that he would hold an unprecedented Heavenly Geniuses Grand Banquet. All heavenly geniuses from the continent could attend. Of course, the main reason why Huangfu Ao was doing this was to gather all the top 10 geniuses together for the first time. Once the news of the Heavenly Geniuses Banquet, the kings of geniuses of the Central Divine region. On the second day after Huangfu Ao's announcement, the Burning Sky sect made a move. First, they set the location of the gathering at the most famous Thousand Island Lake in the entire Heavenly Qin continent. The Thousand Island Lake, as the name suggested, was a lake with thousands of islands. The environment was beautiful and picturesque. It was a well-known brothel in the Tianqian mainland. In the Thousand Island Lake, there was the most famous brothel in the Tianqian mainland, the 100 Immortals House. It was rumored that the 100 Immortals House had 100 top beauties. Each of them was like a celestial maiden that had descended to the mortal world, causing people to be reluctant to part with them. There were also countless cultivators who traveled thousands of miles just to see the true appearances of these celestial maidens. Don't think that the fairies of the 100 Immortals House were ordinary prostitutes. It was said that they were proficient in zither, chess, calligraphy, and painting. Moreover, each of them had outstanding talent. Their cultivation wasn't any weaker than the disciples of the major forces. More importantly, these fairies were still virgins. Ever since they were born, they hadn't received a single guest. Now that the Heavenly Geniuses Grand Banquet was set at the Thousand Island Lake, it was obvious that the 100 Immortals House had agreed to it. Thinking of so many heavenly geniuses gathering at the Thousand Island Lake, everyone guessed that the fairies of the 100 Immortals House would show up this time. The combination of heavenly geniuses and beauties completely attracted everyone's attention. At the same time, Huangfu Ao also named the Heavenly Geniuses Grand Banquet as the Heavenly Geniuses Grand Banquet. The meaning was obvious. Although it was a gathering of heavenly geniuses, the real protagonists were still the top 10 heavenly geniuses. Therefore, it was named as the Heavenly Geniuses Grand Banquet. The location was set at the Thousand Island Lake, and the time was set to be 1 month later. At the same time, many disciples of the Burning Sky sect were also rushing to various places with invitations. They personally delivered the invitations to the various heavenly geniuses. As one of the top 10 heavenly geniuses, Xiao Chen's and the others' invitations were not only personally written by Huangfu Ao. More importantly, the people who delivered the invitations were all exceptional heavenly geniuses of the Burning Sky sect. Letting the heavenly geniuses deliver the invitations showed how high the status of the top 10 heavenly geniuses were. This was probably done intentionally by Huangfu Ao to highlight the status of the top 10 heavenly geniuses. The outside world was in an uproar because of the Heavenly Geniuses Grand Banquet. As time passed, the disciples of the Burning Sky sect also delivered the invitations to the various heavenly geniuses. Take the 9 Firmaments Palace, for example. All the heavenly geniuses, regardless of whether they were the top heavenly geniuses or exceptional heavenly geniuses, had already received the invitations. However, Xiao Chun was an exception. That was because Xiao Chen's invitation was different from that of ordinary heavenly geniuses. On the 8th day after returning to the dustless residence, the exceptional heavenly genius from the Burning Sky sect finally arrived. He went straight to the Heavenly Sword Peak. Inside the dustless residence, the exceptional heavenly genius from the Burning Sky sect, Meng Liang, met the heavenly geniuses known as the Demon Sword, Shao Chun. Sitting in the courtyard with Qin Shiru beside him, Meng Liang didn't know why, but when he saw Shao Chun for the first time as an exceptional heavenly genius, he felt a trace of nervousness in his heart. He didn't dare to look closely at Qin Shiru's appearance for fear of angering Shao Chun. He slowly walked towards Shao Chun and bowed respectfully. Then, he carefully took out the invitation from his storage ring and handed it over with a nervous expression. Senior Brother Shao Chun, this is the invitation personally written by Senior Brother Huangfu Ao. After knowing about the Heavenly Genius's grand banquet, Shao Chun smiled and took the invitation. I will go. Junior Brother, you must be tired from the journey. Why don't you rest at the Heavenly Sword Peak for a few days? Let me do my part as a host. With that, Shao Chun called Qing Luo over and asked her to call Mo Jie over. Soon, Mo Jie hurried over to the dustless residence. Seeing this, Shao Chun smiled and said, This is Junior Brother Meng Liang from the Burning Sky sect. Mo Jie, bring Junior Brother Meng Liang around the Heavenly Sword Peak for the next few days and have some fun. Yes. Mo Jie nodded in response when he heard Shao Chun's words. Thank you, Senior Brother Shao Chun. Meng Liang also thanked him. After letting Mo Jie entertain Meng Liang and the two of them left, Shao Chun opened the invitation and casually glanced at it. A faint smile appeared on his face as he said, This Huangfu Ao is really interesting. What's wrong? Qin Shuoro asked curiously when she saw Shao Chun smile and wondered what was written on the invitation. Take a look for yourself. Shao Chun handed the invitation to Qin Shiru and gestured for her to take a look. Please add, recommend, reward. Chapter 167. Blessed by the heavens, geniuses come forth in large numbers and monsters run amok. Geniuses from all over the world compete for supremacy. However, the 10 great geniuses came out of nowhere and suppressed the geniuses beneath their feet. Today, the 10 great geniuses have broken through their shackles and stepped into the enlightened Earth realm. Therefore, from today onwards, the geniuses will not be able to fight against them. Huangfu Ao threw out a brick to attract more jade by holding the first Heavenly Stellar Geniuses gathering. However, after thinking for a long time, he felt that there was a flaw in this perfect situation. Geniuses come forth in large numbers, and we, the great geniuses, are naturally above the geniuses. Therefore, why can't we take in the geniuses as our followers to increase our strength in the future? The geniuses are our followers, and the great geniuses are our masters. As for the number of followers, it will naturally depend on the strength of each king. Thousand Island Lake, the battle for the great geniuses. The choice of followers is awaiting the arrival of the demon sword. Huangfu Ao pays his respects. There wasn't much nonsense. However, the main purpose of the Heavenly Stellar Geniuses gathering was clearly stated on the invitation. It was for the 10 great geniuses to choose their followers. In other words, it was for the geniuses to choose their masters. After reading the contents of the invitation, Qin Shiru smiled and said, ruling over the geniuses of the world. This Huangfu Ao is very ambitious. He actually treats the geniuses as his followers. Followers were simply followers. It didn't have much to do with the forces they belonged to. For example, Shao Chun was from Nine Cloud Palace. However, if there was a disciple from Dan Valley or Burning Sky sect who admired Shao Chun, they could easily become his followers. In other words, they were followers of Shao Chun. It wouldn't affect anything. Huangfu Ao wanted to use the Heavenly Stellar Geniuses gathering to determine the followers of the 10 great geniuses. Clearly, he wanted to turn this era into the era of the 10 great geniuses. As for the geniuses, they didn't even have the qualifications to be supporting characters. They could only be reduced to pawns, following behind the chosen great geniuses and participating in the battle for supremacy as cannon fodder. Huangfu Ao treated all the Sky Prides as pawns and cannon fodder. One had to admit that Huangfu Ao was indeed worthy of the word Ao in his name. His arrogance was boundless, and he treated all the heroes in the world as dogs. But then again, he did have the qualifications to do so. Then what do you plan to do? Qin Shuru asked Xiao Chun as he put away the invitation. It was obvious that Qin Shuru was asking Xiao Chun if he wanted to take in guests, or if he agreed with Huangfu Ao's decision to let all the prodigies become the guests of the 10 great prodigies. In response to Qin Shuru's question, Xiao Chun smiled faintly. It doesn't matter whether I agree or not. Just like Huangfu Ao said, the situation is already set. Those sky prides can no longer compete with the 10 great prodigies. At the same cultivation level, they are no match for the 10 great prodigies. Now that their cultivation levels have been pulled apart, it's even more so. Therefore, choosing one of the great prodigies they admire and becoming their guest is probably their only choice. Xiaoqin didn't object to Huangfu Ao's suggestion. Qin Shuru smiled faintly. You're still not telling the truth. You clearly don't object, yet you're still making it sound so dignified. All right, let's see how many guests you'll be able to get in this heavenly stellar geniuses gathering with the name of the demon sword. Knowing what Xiaoqin was thinking, Xiao Chun pulled Qin Shuru into his embrace and said with a smile, Silly, what are you looking at? Come with me to the heavenly stellar geniuses gathering this time. He wanted Qin Shuru to come with him to the heavenly stellar geniuses gathering. Qin Shuru was overjoyed when he heard that, but then he said hesitantly, This is a gathering of the prodigies, and it's also the first gathering of the 10 great prodigies. Wouldn't it be inappropriate for you to bring me along? What's there to be afraid of? Who can stop me from doing what I want? This time, I'm going to tell all the prodigies that you, Qin Shu, are my woman. Ha! Without the slightest bit of worry, Xiao Chun laughed heartily and said decisively. It was a little overbearing, but Qin Shuru was deeply attracted to it. A man should have that kind of heroic spirit, and that was also the most irresistible charm of a woman. Burying his head deep into Xiao Chen's embrace, Qin Shuru was very touched. He didn't refuse and said softly, I'll listen to you. He had already decided to bring Qin Shuru to the heavenly stellar geniuses gathering. At the same time, after the date and location of the heavenly stellar geniuses gathering was set, the 100 famous fairies in the heavenly stellar continent in the 100 Immortals house of the Thousand Island Lake were secretly excited. For a long time, the 100 fairies had never received any guests. This time, they were indeed special existences participating in the heavenly stellar geniuses gathering. Moreover, they would be able to choose the person they liked among the many prodigies and offer their virginity. They could even become Tao companions and accompany those prodigies for the rest of their lives. This was also allowed by the boss of the 100 Immortals house. Don't think that the boss of the 100 Immortals house was making a loss by doing this. In fact, it wasn't a loss at all. Thinking about it, using a woman to ensnare a prodigy, this was equivalent to increasing the connections of the 100 Immortals house. It could be said that the boss of the 100 Immortals house was very shrewd. Many of the fairies were secretly looking forward to the arrival of the heavenly stellar geniuses gathering. Naturally, ordinary men couldn't enter their eyes. However, prodigies were enough. However, in the eyes of the fairies, what they were looking forward to more was the 10 prodigies who stood proudly above all the other prodigies. At this time, on a small island in the Thousand Island Lake, dozens of beautiful girls were sitting together. They were chatting and laughing like silver bells from time to time. Because of the appearance of these dozens of girls, the whole space became extremely beautiful. Sister, do you think that you will meet the man of your dreams this time? Then will you meet him again, my good sister? Of course I will. All the prodigies of the heavenly stellar continent are gathered here. They're all dragons and phoenixes among men. How can ordinary people be compared to them? I believe that I will definitely meet the man of my dreams and wish for the rest of my life. Have you guys forgotten that there are still the 10 great prides above the heavens' prides? In the face of their brilliance, even the peerless heavens' prides would pale in comparison. At that time, I'm afraid that you guys will look down on those peerless heavens prides and fight over the 10 great prides. That's right. Sister is right. In front of the 10 prodigies, you guys might look down on those peerless prodigies. Sister is wrong. Although the 10 prodigies are perfect, they are not people that we can covet. They are the targets of Sister Di. How could we dare to surpass them? The girls covered their mouths and chuckled. When they talked about the 10 prodigies, their faces were filled with helplessness, because they knew that even though the 10 prodigies were perfect, they were not people that they could covet because they were the targets of Sister Dyer. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.